I clicked on going live. We have 20 likes there. Now let me go here and see what is happening. How are we? And it's still loading. And it looks like we are live, people. We are live. We're live. We're live. All right. Yeah.
Yes.
What's up, everybody? This is John from Coding Addict, and welcome to another live stream. As always, I am joined by one and only Mr. Paul from Coding After 30 channel. How are you, Paul?
Hey, very good. Good to be here.
What's new in Texas?
Same old, it's finally starting to get chilly. And when I say chilly, like in the high 80s, 90.
Oh, what about all the Californians? Are they making a
I
traffic
know,
there?
I know everybody's moving down here. We got everybody
Yeah,
from,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. For those of
exactly.
you who don't know, that's a new thing now in California. Everybody
Everybody's moving to
moves to
Texas.
Texas. Yeah. So I'm gonna have no traffic soon, and Paul is gonna have all the traffic. Which is, I mean,
That's
since
true.
we're
That's
doing
true.
live stream, I think we're gonna be fine. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, Paul uploads a bunch of cool content on his channel. For example, one of his latest videos, he talks about the biggest obstacle for the new self-taught developers, and I'll leave actually a link somewhere here above me. So before, like, be sure to go ahead and check him out. Again, the channel name is Coding After 30, and I'm really, really glad that he decided to join because I, first of all, I'm having a bunch of blast, and I hopefully he does,
Oh yeah,
and
it's so fun.
hopefully all of us. And first of all, I want to thank everyone who showed up last time. Again, like I just said, we had a bunch of good questions. We had a lot of fun. Hopefully, everyone else had a fun. I really want to thank everyone who took their time and went on Twitter and asked the questions. We're still deciding on how we're gonna do this. Basically, how busy it's gonna be because it's usually in my experience that it dies down. People have better things to do and all that, and that's fine. But if we'll have some time, then we'll jump to the Twitter questions. If not, then me and Paul will schedule something where we basically answer them, or I'm just gonna go and answer, I don't know, in a text format or something along those lines. And we also have decided to start with a new format. Basically, there's a new section where we'll start with one question. So that's pretty much gonna be the theme for the live stream. And today's question is jQuery going to take over React in popularity in 2022? I say
Of course,
absolutely. What
of
about
course
you,
it is.
Paul? Yeah,
Of course, Jayquay is going to win. It's making a comeback. I know you look at
that's
the graph.
that's
The
exactly
graph
what I'm
might
hearing.
be looking like the wrong way, but give it like a few days. They made a huge announcement. It's gonna
Yes,
be
there's
it's
jQuery
huge, huge.
22 point whatever
Yeah,
something coming.
something. Yeah,
Okay, that was just my lame attempt to joke a bit, simply
pretty good
because
actually.
the actual question is very serious, and I keep getting this a lot, and I just wanted to lighten up the mood a little bit before I don't know, maybe someone gets upset of what we're about to say. Again, it's never our intention to discourage anyone. We just want to share our kind of real experience and give you the best advice without any kind of strings attached, like, hey, you should buy my course or any of that crap. Now, the real question we're going to focus on goes something like this: is it crazy to quit a very comfortable full time job that is making you miserable to focus on coding, getting experience, and freelancing for career switch? Very, very quickly before we dive into question, I just want to say that if it goes a little bit longer, Paul agreed that we'll stay 15, 20 minutes, whatever this question takes, because I really want to spend time on this one because I am getting this a lot. This is question I think that every self-taught developer goes through, and there's multiple variations. There's people who are just sick of their jobs. Maybe there's people who want to earn more money, and again, there's multiples, like, variations of what people are wondering this about. But the idea is the same: should I quit the job, or should I somehow keep the job and continue learning? And then answer yes will be, might be a little bit lengthy, but I really want to kind of give you my perspective and the things that I would look at. And I'm really interested in Paul's kind of experience as well, because again, we had very, very similar experiences, but it's
Yeah,
always interesting to hear it from both sides. And also the reason why I want to answer this question is because I keep getting messages from both sides. I get messages from people who did it, who quit their jobs. Maybe went to the boot camp, maybe they self-taught or whatever, and they succeeded. They jumped to industry and they're good to go. And then I also hear the other side where someone is stuck. They made that decision, they cannot really leave, and that kind of, it's very hard to answer those type of messages. So we wanted to have like one place where we answer this question from like various sides, just to give
Yeah.
you the best point of views, and then that way you can just make your own decision. And I want to start off with this. This might sound a little bit funky to some people, but if you are in a high paying field, I'm talking about medicine, finance, law, engineering, before making kind of any decisions to jumping off the ledge, I would first check the company and check the industry. Now, what am I talking about? You need to understand that coding is pretty much taking a lot of industries, right? It's, you might not see that in the news or whatever, but it's happening all the time, right? Just look at accounting, what's happening, right? Accountants, I'm not saying they're going to go out of work, but for example, I've been doing accounting already many years in the app and everything, right? So what I'm trying to say is that before you just wander off and say, hey, I'm done with this one, just consider what's happening in your industry. It's not going to take you that long to actually understand that. I'm not saying that you need to do half years research and I don't know, file for PhD dissertation. But I'm saying just check. 2 3 hours is going to be more than enough. Now, why am I saying that? Because most likely, if you are in that field, right, you have spent a lot of time on your studies, you have built your career, you have spent a lot of money on that. And you know what? In my experience, for example, Paul, you're good at your job. It's not usually the guy who like barely makes it to the office and then usually leaves for a weekend on Thursday, right? It's the person who's actually good at their job, but they want, maybe they want more freedom, they want more, I don't know, creativity or whatever the case may be, right? And also the thing is, the company likes you. They really want you. Like I bet they enjoy actually the fact that you work for them. So before you just go off and say, okay, I'm done with this whatever career, like think about what would happen if you would combine all the knowledge that you have accumulated, like with your newfound love for coding, right? If you can actually somehow use that experience and be like, yeah, I'm actually good in code as well. I mean, you would be a badass. Like literally, you would know all of this about industry and you would also code. Now, there is a thing, of course, that for each industry different. It doesn't mean that, every industry has that. And it's also, for example, in finance, you have Python. It's so there are like some things you need to be aware of. But for me, like coding is about solving like challenges and just being creative. So I definitely would take something if there would be a possibility for my industry. And also the reason why I'm saying that, because I spent before coding, before I discovered coding, I pretty much spent 5.5 years to like studying for electrical engineering. Now, the reason why I had to do that is because I had a full time job. There was no option for me, like, okay, I'm going to quit and then I'm just going to go 4 years to school. So I was doing nights, I was doing summers. And by the end of it, I discovered coding. I was really lucky that I was able to transfer my pretty much my degree. There was a lot of overlapping things. Now, that degree technically is useless. Everything that I learned, whatever, as far as web development, is not from the any of those degrees. But I was very determined by the end to be like, you know what? No, I'm gonna get something out of this, because 5 6 years that you spent, it's and they just say, well, okay, I found coding. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I love my job, but you also need to be a little bit practical in when you make those kind of decisions. I don't like to make decisions just based on emotion. I mean, that's at least my opinion. Now, if you like reading books, there's actually very cool book by the name of "So Good They Can't Ignore You" by Cal Newport. It's actually one of my favorite authors. Again, books are not for everybody. I'm not saying that you should read it, but if you're interested, he kind of looks at many like aspects of it and describes it way more eloquently. Now, before we lose too many viewers right now, before everyone starts yelling, "What is this guy eating or smoking there in California?" Okay, let's imagine that that's not your scenario, right? So I just really wanted to cover
But
this one because
but that's a great point you made. Like, by the way, guys, if you jumped in here, thank you for jumping in. And if you smash the like button, it does help other people discover the live stream, especially if you're going to enjoy it. But the one thing that I really wanted to say, what you just said makes perfect sense. I talked to someone who's a linguist. They
mm,
did they got their degree in college, they, did their masters, they're working on PhD, and they're publishing papers on linguistics, and
mm,
they really like coding. So he started learning React, doing all the stuff, and then he realized he already has so much wealth and knowledge in his current
mm,
field
mm,
that he
mm,
basically just like, you know what, I'm going to stick in my field, but I'm
mm,
going to learn
mm,
Python and use Python to solve problems that I'm encountering in my field.
mm,
And
mm.
so now not only he's able to do coding because he likes it, but he's also able to leverage all his experience from his
Yeah, yeah,
PhD and
yeah,
everything else. So that's a
yeah.
very smart point, and a lot of people don't think about it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, no, that's
that's 100%.
that's a very good example. See, again, I keep repeating. This is why Paul is here. Yes, he
I mean,
makes
like,
he makes all the sense in the world. So before again, I understand that there's very very different situations, and before
right,
you
but yep,
wonder what's happening with me, uh, as far as just regular job, right? If that's not your case, if you're just listen, I want to quit the job, just give me yes or no. Then I would ask myself pretty much three and a half questions, and you'll see what I'm talking about. First, how long you can support yourself realistically. Now, I don't want to be a downer, but the reality is that even some people who go to boot camps, they spend 3 months, 6 months, 1 year looking for a job, and maybe then they find a job. Now, the only reason, by the way, why I'm using boot camps and why probably in a lot of my examples I use boot camps because it's easier for me because I, let's say talk to one student and then I have info on the other 20. It doesn't mean that just because you're doing, for example, self-taught stuff, that it's going to take you 10 times longer. Usually, why you see this difference if, let's say, someone went to boot camp and maybe somebody self-studied and that took them a year is because they do have a life. I'm talking about the
yeah,
full-time
work,
job, the family, and
family.
all that. So don't confuse the two where you only can go to boot camp. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just boot camps are a very good example of what's happening. All right. So you need to understand whether you can actually support yourself for all that time. Because I know it looks very cute in the movies, people who are what's the saying, pulling up yourself by the bootstraps and whatever stuff, right? But when you are in the thick of it, you cannot pay the rent and you need to learn the code. It's not fun. I definitely I don't think that it's something that I mean it's nice to talk about it and say and make a crying video and say how great I was, but I mean I'm not talking about myself right now, but in general it's no fun. So I definitely would kind of caution you. Now, if that's not the case, let's say you cannot support yourself. Do you have a support system? I'm talking about spouse, family. Now, friends is kind of iffy. I mean,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
might
yeah.
say yes, but
No, 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 no,
but
no, 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 no.
but
Unless you live with your, yeah, no, it's your
yeah,
spouse, your wife.
they,
Yeah,
they, they
definitely.
can can they do that? Can they be that support system where you have this option of basically kind of wandering into totally different area, right? Do you have that? Or if you don't, then the last one is as much as you don't want to hear, can I go back to my previous job? Right? If worse comes to worse, let's say I'm not saying that you need to kill your dream. I'm talking about hey, if I cannot pay the rent, can I take go back again, accumulate some money and then keep on studying? Can you do that? Or I burned all my bridges. Now for people again who are like I'm gonna use this word big shots because in my experience, people who do learn to code in one of those industries, they are good at their job. So for them, it's pretty easy. I know that for example, nurses can go pretty much anywhere. They will get the job and all that. Now, if you cannot answer yes to like none of them, then I definitely wouldn't do that. That's like I just said, it's very risky. It looks very cute in the movies. In reality, it can be a nightmare. And the fact is that the progress that you think you're gonna do by let's say leaving and then you have no money, it's actually gonna be the opposite. You'll be just mentally drained. Now the last one, just to give you a kind of quick my story, I was able when I was going for at that point I was already finishing my degree and already learning coding, but I was able in my job basically tell them, hey, I want to work part-time, right? I was able financially to do that by that time. And I just said, hey, listen, instead of working whatever 5 days, I'm going to work 2.5 and 3, right? Depending on a week. And I was able to continue. And that way it was way less stressful for me where I was basically was able to study rest of the week. And then I still knew that I have the steady paycheck. So that's my story. And again, if you cannot say yes to, I mean, any of those three that I first mentioned, I definitely, my suggestion is not to quit the job. But again, you need to make that decision. Those are just things that I'm looking for. Now, I do have two more quick things that I want to add, but before I do that, I really want to like hear what Paul has to say, and then I'm just gonna finish off with them. So
Yeah,
yeah, what was
no,
your experience, Paul?
yeah, very important point. I mean, I started, studying like coding so long ago that I actually had a lot of responsibilities. I was working full time, and that was really hard. And I didn't quit my job because at the end of the day, we all have to eat, we all have to pay the bills, and if you don't have savings or you don't have a good support system like you mentioned, your spouse that able to kind of pick up some of the weight, it's going to be very difficult because one of the biggest stressors in life is financial stress. Like people get divorced over financial stuff. So if you're in a family, you have a wife, you have kids, you really have to consider this question because it's not just you who's going to learn to code, but it's your family who's also going to have to deal with the consequence. So you do need to make sure that you think about that. And obviously, if you're young, single, or if you're single, like in my case, I started to learn seriously when I got divorced. I'm not recommending you guys get divorced. It's not a good thing. But the point I'm trying to make is that the less responsibility you have, like the more chances you could take. So for me, I ended up leaving my job. I had savings, by the way. Don't let me tell you that I didn't. I had savings at least to last me for 6 months. And if I was really, really good, I could have probably saved it for a year. And what I also did, I left my job, but I picked up a job at a supermarket just to make some money. So I'm again not eating through my savings. And then I studied either like in the morning or late at night when I wasn't working, but at the same time, like I still had a plan, like how am I going to make money? How am I going to do that? And that's very important for you guys to remember that because if you like, John had a good example. He said some people that go to boot camp, they graduate, they won't get a job for 3 months, 6 months to a year. And that's not unheard of. I had a friend who actually graduated from Dartmouth with a computer science
Wow.
degree, and it took him 6 months to get a job. You know what I mean? It's like with a computer science degree from Dartmouth. And so it could
Mm,
happen. And so definitely don't quit your day job unless you have the support necessary to help you out because not only like, yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. And I think like a lot of people, they feel like they're going to be more motivated to work harder. And I would say
mm,
if you're not
mm,
motivated to work part-time, like, how are you going to be motivated quitting your job and working on coding? Like, because it's hard, it takes time. You need to have some sort of fallback for sure. For sure. Like don't
mm,
don't quit your jobs, guys, because like that story you told me, like how before we got on,
mm,
how
mm, mm,
someone on Christmas, they told
mm,
you and they had a very sad story
mm,
because
mm,
things
mm.
didn't work out. Like you
Yeah,
got to
no.
plan for things not working out, and you want to make sure that you have some sort of safety mechanism. For me, like I quit my job because I had saving, number one. Number two, I was living by myself, so I rented a apartment that I'm still in. It's one room, which is
Mm,
super like affordable and cheap, and I still had a part-time job.
mm, mm. Yeah, no,
It's
no,
just,
no. This
yeah,
is this
it's
is to kind of like I'm exactly the same where I like to have my ducks in a row. Where again, like I was saying, I understand like this is very personal because the job that I was doing, I literally like again, this is not a crying video or whatever. I hated it. I literally hated it. It was, like waking up in the morning. There was long hours before I kind of went part time and everything, and it was like I literally it was really bad. But you still need to make, hey, listen, okay, what am I gonna do? I can quit the next day, but what is the
yeah,
plan? Like where I'm
right,
going with this? And basically, I just want to finish off with kind of two quick things. If you can quit, right? Again, we're not saying what. Again, I had my list where I was telling you what I would do, but if you can quit, okay. But remember about one thing. Remember about the burnout, where if you go from 0 to, let's say, 60 hours a week, right? There's a lot of stories where actually this is what's happening in boot camps, that people just quit because they burn out.
or not, yeah,
If you have this option, awesome. Okay, you can focus on a coding and great job. But I would still suggest starting it kind of slow, where you go, okay, like maybe I'm going to do such and such hours a day. And then you slowly increase instead of jumping like all in. And then, I don't know, within a week or two, you're faced with some kind of problem. and then you're just lose it, because what you need to understand, your brain still needs to, like, recover or whatever, right? So you still need to, I don't know, do some stuff that you enjoy. You cannot be like a robot all the time, right? And then lastly, what I just want to say, that changing industries is hard, right? And coding is no different. And perks are definitely there. You'll get the freedom, paycheck, creativity. Now, not every job, but most jobs, yes, you do get that. But it does take time. And I understand that while you're doing that self study thing, right? It might seem that you're not progressing. Like, listen, I'm doing this one and that one, and why nothing is happening. And especially it's true if you have a bunch of commitments, right?
Yeah.
If you have a full time work, if you're a parent, or maybe if you're both, you have full time job, you're a full time parent, meaning, I mean, you're a parent, and then you're also studying to code. But I wouldn't focus and be like too hard on yourself, because the fact that you're already doing shows that you have the resilience and you have the determination. And trust me, not many people can do that. It is like, it's tough. It's tough to kind of get into the industry. And the thing is, every day you do something, you just keep slowly getting closer to your goal. And I think the biggest thing for me is not to focus like solely on, okay, whether I can do such and such hours or not, but the time that you have, I mean, just don't make some silly mistakes like
Yeah.
we talked about before. Like, do the research of who's hiring in the area, right? So you're not jumping the stack. So if they're hiring for such and such, then at least you're studying that. Then finding the like-minded people, where effectively those are the people that will help you out, whether they work in the industry, whether they're in the same shoes as you. But that is very, very important. And then as far as the quantity, I would focus on a quality. So let's say if you have that time, right? Whether you have the social media open at that point, right? Or whether you're actually focusing that and then you're applying that, and then you slowly moving forward. And then the last thing I promise is the fact that I always kind of believe, and I always suggest to people, pick like whichever option you choose, whether that is bootcamp, whether that is, I don't know, self study. Pick that's something that is sustainable, because you'll need that support system when you are faced with those issues, and troubles, or whatever however you want to call them. Everyone faces them, and literally, like, at least in my experience, it's the people who can just kind of get over those, I don't know, those, I wouldn't call them even mistakes. It's just setbacks that you get, right? You cannot find something, maybe you get rejected already, I don't know which time. It's the people who can get over it, and kind of put it, okay, so this happened, I'm just going to keep on moving. Those are the ones that, at least in my experience, who succeed. It's not about whether you can do first week 60 hours or anything like that. Like, that's it. I'm
Yeah,
done.
listen. So, guys, before stream, I cut my hair, like it's all like shaved, like I messed up real bad. Look, getting a bad haircut, that's a mistake you could recover from. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be okay. But if you quit your job and you have a family, you have people that rely on you for support, and things don't work out, like people, that's very terrible. So definitely take this question seriously. If you have a spouse, if you have kids, make sure that you realize that the decision is no longer yours. You have to talk with your family, and you have to make sure that you all agree. If you have the support, if you're financially able to, do it together, do it. Like, I have a friend, his fiance, I don't think they're engaged, but I'm going to say fiance, they've been living together forever. She was a nurse, and she wanted to do something different. She wanted to get into coding, so they made a decision for her to go to a QA boot camp. That's what she wanted to start with. Um, and he's like, look, you're going to be doing this for 3 months, and so I want you to focus on this. And they had this conversation, and they made an agreement, and so she was able to do the QA stuff. She probably worked on the weekends, and he did his thing. And so as long as you guys make a decision together, it's fine. But what you don't want to do is make a decision and not tell your spouse or anybody in your family, and then all of a sudden Christmas comes and you're like, yeah, we have no Christmas presents for anybody. Because like, I don't mean to laugh at it, but it's like stuff like that happens. And I'm laughing at the fact that I had money saved, like I had planned for a year of, like, that money that you have saved, by the way, it goes down really quickly. Like, so if you don't have an income, and so by the time I was able to get my job, like, even though I had money saved, I went through a lot of my savings. And lucky for me that I still worked part time during that time, because it's very hard to do something and not be able to like pay your bills. Like, so definitely think about it 100%. Don't jump the gun. It's like, you know, because the things that could go wrong will probably go wrong. You know what I mean? And so you want to do things, like you said, keep it sustainable. Like, like make sure you're learning to code in a way, that allows you to keep working, pay your bills, move forward, and you guys gonna get there. But you know,
Yeah,
if you,
no, no, no. This is
it's
also
like,
something that I always
oh
like
my gosh,
stress. It, I know that sometimes it feels like that road to success, right? If you don't have that time, it feels like, oh, like it's impossible, but it's not.
yeah,
It's
that's
actually,
true.
you see a lot of people when they have like less time, they're way more focused, and they understand what things they need to do. They don't kind of jump around and all that. So yeah, I guess this is our kind of um best kind of stab at it. I mean, and we'll use this one later whenever we need to kind of suggest that. So I guess we can start jumping into questions, I think.
Yeah,
um
someone had a super chat. I don't know if you
yes,
saw it.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, we did have two of them, I believe. Completed React course and did a lot of projects. Want to learn backend dev. Decent at both Python and JS. Very confused what to do next. This is going to be very interesting because I think that for Paul, like he's going to kind of back me up right away. Like one of the things that I'm definitely like seeing as far as my friends and everything, that it's kind of interesting stack that JavaScript is the front end and Python is actually a back end. I know you just now, a friend of mine is actually going from front end. They're transferring kind of into backend right now in Python. So I would actually say if you're good at Python, then I would probably start with that one. What do you think?
Y- yeah, I think it basically depends. Like, if do you have a, like, what jobs do you have in your area? So for me, like, I'll use me as an example. And first of all, before I use myself as an example, I want to say that if you're learning JavaScript, and you could also use JavaScript in the backend with Node, to me it makes sense just continue with JavaScript, because you already know JavaScript. So learning Node is going to be much simpler, um, especially if there's jobs available. But my first job, I got hired as a front end React developer, and they told me it's like you need to learn a back end language, and they happened to have their stack with C sharp. So I started learning C sharp, and that was my transition to back end with C sharp. So I didn't choose it; my job chose it for me because that's the tech stack they were using. So now the company that I work at, their back end is with Python, and so, like, if I want to stay in the company, I'm going to learn Python.
Mm,
So for me, it's like I'm going to learn the thing that the company uses. But if you already good at Python, look for Python companies.
mm,
Like, if you're really good at Node.js, or that's where you're going, look for Node.js jobs. The only caveat being, just make sure that those jobs exist. Like, for instance, if there's no Python jobs and no Node
mm,
jobs, and it's
mm,
just
mm.
like PHP, like, none of those will help you. You got to do what's popular in your area. So that's what I
And
would add.
there's also like little caveats. So again, like what Paul is exactly correct. So are you doing this in order to find a job, or that is just you learn the front end development and now you want to build full stack projects? If it's just to build projects to whatever, for yourself, maybe apps or whatever, then if you're JavaScript, of course there's going to be less of a learning curve. But again, I'm not sure how much you like, if you're comfortable with React, how much you know Python and all that stuff. I do want to do a shout out to Tammy Schultz. She just enrolled in one of my courses. We have been
Oh, nice.
having conversations back and forth, and she says here, my survival job is physical. Leaves me to think about what I was studying the night before, and that exactly was my case. I was also at the job when I was still in university. That I was like, It was construction, and it was the same deal. I pretty much whatever I learned the day before, I was kind of just going over in my head and keeping books and reading during the lunch and all kinds of interesting things and whatever. And she says keeps me sane and helps me to identify if I really am retaining info or not. And actually, when I was talking to Tammy, she's taking that road where she's kind of, she's not jumping the gun like we said before. She basically has the backup plan, and she's just going towards the MERN stack, I believe. Basically, a full stack developer or
with
whatever.
JavaScript and Mongo and yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that I do want to mention as far as the full stack, little like something that people need to be aware of, as if you don't have much experience in the industry, then it's easier to get either a backend role or a front end role. Like if you're just coming off like as a first job getting a full stack, I'm not again, and we're not using terminology impossible or whatever, but in my experience, it's not as common for somebody to just waltz in there and do the full stack one. So I definitely would kind of pick two, and most likely that is a front end in the beginning.
Yeah, it's crazy because people underestimate how much stuff you require to know for your job. And so, like, I talked to you about it. Like, to me, it blows my mind how could someone be like in 3 months, like, got my job as a full stack developer. Like, I have really hard time believing it because of how much time you have to learn. And I think like the only caveat or excuse I could say to this, how people are able to land jobs either because they're just like the one in a million, or they studied stuff previously and they already had experience prior going to
Mm,
boot camp, learn 3 months. So in my case, if I had to think of getting a job as a full stack developer, it would probably take me way longer than it took me to get hired as a front end. And
mm,
so I
mm,
think it's
mm,
still, to me, the advice that I give was like, learn front end. And we had this girl Katya, like, that I talked to, and she, like, the only reason I mentioned her is because she kind of followed the stuff we talked about, like committed to just focusing on the front end with React, and she was able to get hired. She was able to get a job, and I was like, wow, like, like, let's you stay committed and learn the things that you have to do. Get out there, you're gonna get hired. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that you know people like try to dive into full stack, right away. It's hard. It's hard. I wouldn't be able to do it. So
mm, mm. No, I'm just what I'm learning people from my mistakes. Uh I'm basically this time I'm trying to read the chat. Otherwise, last time I was just basically like what's the name? A confused senior citizen in the store. I was so now I'm kind of trying to I'm looking for questions that I can kind of quickly answer. Hi John, when's the giveaway of the courses? That is usually on a 20th. This is a good one, Paul. As a front end developer, how much HTML and CSS do you do versus JavaScript on a daily basis?
uh look, like, I'm the worst person to ask these questions because I think of myself like I don't know enough, so I constantly try to
Mm,
study more. But the bare minimum to get a job in front end development, you need to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you can't have a web page without HTML and CSS. Like, so if you're going for front end, you need to. This is, and we talked about it like from the last stream. You should be able to find a website on ThemeForest or find a bunch of mockups, and you should look at the design. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but you should be able to know enough HTML and CSS to create that design yourself. And if you can't
mm,
do that, you're not job ready, because when I started working, that was like the bare minimum requirement. They're like, okay, you see this picture of this website, you need to make this component here. So you need to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to be able to do that. So, uh, yeah, like, you definitely need to be able to practice recreating mockups with HTML and CSS. Like, for sure, for sure. Like, it's like, can you
yeah,
go fishing without a fishing rod? No,
and that's
no.
to tell you like if I have to say something that I what I'm noticing for sure in courses, that in React course I have way more questions about how some HTML and CSS thing was done, not about
Yeah,
the people are getting the functionality and
yeah.
everything. the point being is that there seems to be a lot of times this kind of rush to react, which I understand, because we all the time keep saying, well, look what companies are looking for, right? They're looking for React. But at the same time, everything that you learn in React is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript if you want to build something.
Yeah.
It's not, there's not this magic React store. Yeah, it does offer like bunch of goodies, but it's only useful if you're already comfortable with all of that stuff, and again, we actually talked about before about how you shouldn't spend like 3 years on getting it, whatever. But the point being is you always will be going back.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why I was like, when I was building, let's say, a React course, I I uh, I don't want to say frustrated, but let's say I'm enjoying way more right now in a Node course because I get to code. There's just functionality right now.
Yeah.
I am
Not too
building
much
front
UI.
end stuff, but when you're talking about UI, like we talked about theme forest, you're getting stuff, and then it's HTML and CSS, HTML and CSS. You're just building, building, building. So to answer your question, it depends on what you're doing on that daily basis. There's again, for example, for companies, there's if your company already is using some kind of pre-made a library or whatever, you just import the components. You go with Material UI, you just set them up on a screen, and you're done. You're dealing with, let's say, only the functionality. But if you have to start doing some different stuff, then of course it's going to be different. But it's way more than you actually think. Like it's. I'm not saying that there is no logic, but for every project, you do need to get up and running with that HTML and CSS,
Yeah.
and kind of
Y- Yeah, I was
hopefully
gonna
that
say,
answers
and
the
that's one of the
question.
reasons I, like kept coming back to your courses when learning. I took a lot of courses, but I came back to yours because you were building components, like with your HTML, CSS, and your JavaScript. I really enjoyed your React components. Not React style components class, and we were building different components because at the end of the day, you are going to be building stuff which combine HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so, one practice that I still do, guys, by the way, I have a job, I work, but I still do this. I'll randomly go and look at a website, and I'll be like, oh, I kind of like how they made this little
Yeah, I
component
do
be like
the
a
same.
cart or whatever, and I'll go into code and then I'll make it.
Uh,
But I make everything with I first. 'Cause this is I'm saddened to admit this, but I'm gonna share with you guys my weakness. I am better at React than I am at vanilla JavaScript. So this is what I do. I go find a cool website. I build a component with React and style components. Regardless how you feel about style components, I like style components because then I could take that code, move it
mm,
anywhere, and it's
mm,
gonna work. That's what I like about it. I don't have to worry about anything. But then after I build my React component, I'll go and make the same thing with vanilla JavaScript. And
mm,
and this is the whole point, is that you're constantly going to be learning. Like there's no such a thing like I learned it and I stopped. You're always going to have to keep practicing, keep building, and keep learning. But like I've never been at a development job where I didn't have to build something, like even in the most basic sense as a junior developer, that I didn't have to build something that did not involve me knowing HTML and CSS. It's just that important. It's that important. Unless you're doing like super back end where all you're doing is writing like C# or Node, and you're just talking to the database. You don't even care about the front end. Then yes, then it makes sense. But no,
I
that's
I I also have like something funny. So basically, there's some times when I need to sign up for something, right? I'm not talking about the daily job when I'm not talking about like, let's say, if I'm looking for something online, but I'm just talking like real life stuff. I don't know, doctors sometimes or whatever, whatever the case may be. And I know that this is extremely annoying to my wife because what happens, she's usually on top. She's like, okay, you need to go fix this one because and usually 1 hour later, I'm like, I found like I'm about I'm as I'm signing in, I'm like, oh wow, this is very cool UI, interesting what they used. And then next thing I know, I start going through the dev tools and start
yep,
looking
yep.
at the functionality and how did they get that hover effect, and that's something that she knows better not to like kind of give me this kind of leeway because
Yeah, you gotta
it's a
start
kind of, what's the proper
peeking
name
in.
for
Like, how
that?
do you
It's that professional. There's a special name
curiosity?
for
I
it.
don't know. I don't know what the
Yeah,
yeah.
no, there's kind of like where you like, for example, some people I don't know who work in music industry, when they walk
Oh,
in the music store, they start like putting the CDs
yep,
in like,
yep,
well,
yep.
that's the same thing. Or sometimes when I see somebody sends me something, and I see the website from 1990s, right? And I'm like,
Oh my
come
god.
on, just like,
Yeah.
no, restaurants, right? You want to order
Yeah.
food, and you go to their site, and it's like, come on,
Yeah.
just
What you guys
hire
do?
somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Exactly.
doesn't take that much. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah.
so annoyed by that. The funniest thing, like about uh, developer tools in Chrome, I love it because whenever you go to website where they have these constant pop-ups or something stupid happening, I'll just go into tools and put display to none. It's just like no worry. Uh, yeah. By the way, guys, listen. If you guys enjoying this live stream, definitely smash the like button. Not for us, but for you guys who are in the chat. And by the way, definitely we're making our way through the questions for sure. But keep the conversation going. Ask some good questions. We definitely want to make sure that we're getting you guys involved. So yeah, yeah.
I
Thanks. Yeah.
saw.
Thanks for
First of all, I want to do a shout out to Andrew Ladd. I think he's definitely one of your guys. No, he's super cool.
I think it's your guy that came. I don't know, but he's an
Andrew.
awesome dude.
I
Yeah.
thought that he was.
Listen, you got too many
Yeah,
subscribers. That's what I'm saying.
but anyway, no. He's super cool. Like he made a funny joke before that about the student loans. I don't know whether he was talking about me or he was talking about himself. I couldn't figure out. But yeah, I didn't get any forgiveness, Andrew. I had to. I was actually paying everything, pretty much straight up cash.
So,
And we have Ian Bayless. I definitely want to again do the shout out. He's been super great supporter, has bought a bunch of my courses, supported me, left a very nice kind of suggestions of what he liked and what he liked. So super cool person. So I definitely want to give a shout out to him. So good they can't ignore you is a favorite of mine. Also, he likes the book. It combos real well with Atomic Habits. That's
yeah, I
and
read that one. It's a
the
good book.
Slide Edge. I haven't read the Slide Edge one, but yeah, no. Atomic Habits. That's the reason why I keep forcing Paul on Twitter, not on email. And yeah, but actually, I'm going through the what's the name when you're staying off the social media. I realized since we published the last one, I was too much on Twitter, so I kind of just logged out. So let's see
Yeah,
how long.
yeah,
There was also
yeah.
one
It's
question.
hard. Like not to be on social, but
Well,
yeah,
it's
it's
just
hard.
you kind of like you find yourself, repeating and whatever, and it's just you feel like you're just wasting your time. That's why I always keep saying that, instead of maybe like instead of focusing on how much time you have, like how well you can use it. Because social media is just like for example, I don't have Facebook account, I don't have Instagram account.
Yeah,
I use very sparingly again LinkedIn and Twitter. But if I feel that this is too much, then I just sign off. I feel that it's way more important for me to do something else than that. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. There was actually one interesting question, which is one of those the usually the ones that start a fight, flex versus grid. And let me say
that's it.
something that I'm like it's my firm belief that they both solve the problems, and it's not I think it's not kind of I wouldn't use the word correct, but it's a little bit immature to say, okay, now I have a grid, I'm not going to use the Flexbox.
Yeah,
First of all, what you need to understand is that when we're talking about just straight up layouts, I really catching myself using. I mean, I don't know to the T, but I don't know, six maybe whatever properties of Flexbox, and then I'm using whatever 3 4 properties for the grid. Now, of course, as the layout gets more complex, then again you go and you figure out what do I need to do to get the style layout or whatever. But in general, getting the nav bar on a page, getting the cards on a page, and all that, you can get away with literally, I don't know, again, total maybe 20 lines of code.
yeah,
So well, I'm only going to do it with the grid and I'm not going to do it with the Flexbox. There are some cases where I do it first with the Flexbox, and then I'm like, let me try it with the grid as far as horizontal layout, because I only use it Flex only for the horizontal layout. Like
yeah,
when you're starting to have 2 columns and whatever, then
yeah.
usually like I go with grid. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, similar. I think like you need to know both for sure. And what I do, like I'll do the main layout with grid, and then if inside like a grid thing, I'm like, I would have to lay something out. Like I'll use, to center an image or whatever. Like I'll use Flexbox, stuff like
Mm,
that.
mm, yeah.
Like basically, grid and flex, you can't just pick one or the other. Like you need to know both.
Yeah, there was this kind of hipster kind of thing when the grid came out. They were I remember that in some initial tutorials it was like, but this guy's still using Flexbox. He's such a loser. There's a
No,
grid.
no, 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 no,
And I'm
no.
like,
You can use both.
well, yeah, I mean there is a grid, but it does like you can know both. I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
again, I wouldn't start building something really complex with Flexbox just because just you're trying to prove the point.
Well, there are certain
But,
things Flexbox can't do that
yeah,
Grid
yeah,
can.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So
so
you definitely need Grid. You know what, guys? Just like we recommended, jQuery. You need jQuery with floats, floats, and jQuery is the way to go for
yeah,
2022 next year.
yeah,
That's what you guys have
that
to do.
was
I,
hey,
build
jQuery was
with
the
floats,
deal.
with floats, with floats.
I want to
And
quickly answer. Yeah, on Twitter we had this. We actually had this. It was kind of a joke, but it wasn't. There was actually a question: should you use jQuery in 20 whatever the year right now is and will be? For I would never do it for personal projects, never.
no,
And if it doesn't have that big of an API where I don't see why the company, if they really want you to learn jQuery, you can like if you know JavaScript, you can. It's not like so out of you know blue whatever that it's so tough to get or whatever. So I unless there's, but I don't see any companies here that are really hiring jQuery as far as I've been looking around.
yeah, yeah.
I definitely wouldn't.
I remember
So
I started learning jQuery and somebody goes to me like, "You don't even need to know this anymore." I'm like, "Thank God." Just
yeah,
stop.
yeah.
Uh,
That's that's the Python is backend developer, blah blah blah, data scientist. Do you remember? Do I memorize all the properties of the Flexbox? No, like I was saying, I literally there's so justify content and align items. Those are the two
so
that
so
yeah you because you
okay.
have used it already 30,000 times. Right now there's the new one, the gap, what sets up the nice kind of gaps in between. That is the one that I kind of memorize, but meaning memorize, just use and then remember. And the same goes for grid. You're talking about grid, grid line items or whatever that property name was, and
Yep.
then set it up as three columns or two columns or whatever column layout. And again, the more stuff starts happening, then I know that there was this in Gatsby course I built like kind of this interesting layout with overlapping kind of columns. So that was I know that like few people have said they really like. Yeah, that's the one where I went literally through and kind of research and how is exactly when the basically the idea is that you have two column layout, but then it goes kind of negative, so you can overlap actually one over the other, without position absolute. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So then I did more research and all that. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we have job ads. What do we have there? Okay, we probably missed a bunch here.
Yeah, I'm looking at the questions. Yes. Also, if I find one, I'll let you know.
Should
Next.
I need to learn database if I wanted to be a web developer? Uh, that's a kind of, I mean, depends. If just a front end developer, no. But that's something that we talked about, like I mean, the idea is that as you progress as a front end developer, the case is going to be that you're going to get more and more complex projects. And
Yeah.
the one thing, the one kind of the the problems that you start having is that there is no magic API that offers you, right? So okay, yeah, you get I don't know, cocktails API or meals DB or what? Okay, weather. I mean, I can probably go to what's that rapid API or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the place, right? So you can get a bunch of APIs. But the thing is, in order to create something, I don't know, I want to use word custom, you will have to like figure something out. And that's the case where you have this issue where, okay, what do I do? How do I set up something where I can make that post request, where I can,
Yeah.
manipulate that stuff on a server? And that's kind of that little bit silly thing, if you ask me. where you need to learn Node.js and go through the MERN in order to build like a nice front end project. Now, again, I'm not saying you should do that, but this will be something that you face because people ask like, okay, what kind of front end project should I put on a resume, right?
Yeah.
So for every kind of cool project, I mean, you maybe can get away without having the API, but in most cases, you will have something, right?
Yeah.
So where are you going to get it out of the blue, right? So
Yeah.
so so so
Yeah.
that's the thing. That is kind of a little bit annoying if you ask me. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I think like in my case, I think like if you're building a portfolio, in the bare minimum, you need to have a front end application that utilizing some sort of API to display the data, maybe filter the data, whatever. But then if you wanted to take a step and kind of build something a little bit better, it's like you need to showcase that you understand CRUD functionality, create, read, update, and delete, and like in a lot of my projects, I don't make that stuff from scratch. I'll use something like Strappy, but at some point you just have to understand the concept that your front end communicates with the back end. You might not know everything about the back end, but you have to know that you're going to make requests to either create, read, update, or delete. And at my job that I worked at, my first time where we did C sharp backend development, before I started learning C sharp, sometimes like they'll be like, okay, Paul, you need to create this component where people are able to submit the form. And so I'm like, okay, great. I make the form. And then they're like, well, now you got to test to make sure that the form was actually submitted. And so I had to kind of be able to look inside the database to see, like, is the data there? So I didn't really need to know how to work with the data, whatever, but I need to know the bare minimum. Can you log into the database like it was using SQL, and see that the entry actually went through, to make sure it's right
Mm,
to the data and
mm,
stuff like
mm,
that. So you,
mm,
at some point,
mm.
you're definitely going to have to know like the basics of database and the APIs and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely there's a lot to learn. Like I'm always surprised at my job. I'm like, I don't know enough. And it's like just keep learning and learning and learning.
Okay, we have Andreas Aus. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly. Left us a super chat. Thank you very much, Andreas. He's giving us a coffee. Yep.
Nice, nice.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you very much.
yeah, he's a cool dude. I've seen him on my stream a few times,
See,
like all
I'm
the all
telling
the
you,
time, all the
it's
time.
all your, it's, you know, what's happening. Your guys are supporting this. This is what I'm saying. But you know what? And of course, you know what I lost? I lost all those cool things, the voice things, and I don't know where they're at right now. So anyway, I'm gonna focus on the questions, and then this is I dropped the ball here. I usually have somewhere those things that make
Growing
nice.
pains, growing pains.
Yeah, so I'll have to get better next time. Okay, so let's keep on going. How to react, blah blah blah. When they wanted to use it from scan people faces at the airport, do you think they would use some kind of API in order to do that? Oh, that's a very interesting question. Guys, I recently had a React position job where they wanted to use it to scan people faces at the airport. Do you think they would use I mean, in order as far as getting the data, yeah, I don't see like yeah, there would be some kind of API.
Yeah,
As
hundred
far as
percent.
I'm understanding the question, and all that. What tools do you guys use when you're looking at the UI of a project you want to recreate? How do you know what components belong to other components? This is a very interesting. So we already we I guess this is what we'll just keep on saying that as far um as far as getting the project ideas, theme forest very good place, right? And you need to know a little bit of Figma, right? Basics. Grab there's tons of free tutorials out there. Grab that because what's happening as far as interviews, that's the deal right now. Well, I mean, again, not every interview, but this is you'll be given a mock-up. You get a mock-up in Figma, and you just need to recreate that whether whatever the job requires, HTML, CSS, or React. Now, of course, if you're using React, you still need to use HTML, CSS. But as far as the components, I always how to say I'm not the biggest fan of either. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of making everything a single component. Like, let's say every button is a single
Yep.
component, every heading. I find that to be kind of annoying. And I also, at the same time, I don't dump everything in there. So I look at the full application, and then usually, um, when I see that I'm getting already too much kind of stuff in there, I just start splitting them up. But I don't go too crazy because I like the fact that if I can see, everything that's happening. If you have like 10,000 components and everything, I understand that as far as if you're just purely in production, that's you don't have that choice.
Yeah.
That's the reality you work in. It's not like you're gonna come in and you'll say, "Hey, I don't like that. I'll just recode all your code base or whatever." That's ridiculous. But as far as when you're working for like yourself, I would start with, okay, what makes sense in that particular component, right? So what things go like, and if it's too much, then say, okay, let me kind of split them up. But it's very like, if two people would build the same application, they would definitely have different componentry. I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
guarantee you that it's
Yeah.
it's not as
Yeah, I think like from the standpoint of UI design, even if you're doing like HTML, CSS, maybe from the idea like maybe he called it components, but he talked about like the layout. What I do is, go to ThemeForest. I'll find a mockup, and what I do is I literally like on my computer drop boxes around and group everything together, and then I will code it out in HTML and then style it with CSS. And then if you were
mm,
doing React, then I would do the steps you were
mm,
mentioning,
mm.
break down what's necessary into,
But
components or
and
unique
that and
elements.
that's a good place for two things. First, you can get the ideas because as a
Yep.
front end developer, you're not expected to be a designer. I mean, in
Yes,
most
that's a good point.
places
Yep.
at least. And second, you get a good practice, right? So you get the ideas and you get the practice. So if anybody ever asks me, I always say go like, or there's dribble and there's other sites too, but kind of what I like really about ThemeForest is to just get up and running like really fast. Just type it in. Even you can even type what are you specifically looking for, whether that is a app, whether that is, I don't know, a digital agency or whatever the case may be, right? And this is, I really always suggest to everyone who's wants to put the stuff on their portfolio, that's a definitely great place to start,
Yeah.
because if you do know how to make the functionality, it's also much easier, like we talked about before, coming up with that unique project. It's hard. It's You should be doing that. Of course, you shouldn't be copying everything from YouTube, but it's also like, to be fair, it is tough, right? There's only so many ideas out there. And at least when you go there, you can take a look. Okay, so there's this whatever example set. Let me recreate that, right? Let me recreate with React. I'll add the functionality, and that's how you can get that unique project. So then you stand out in a crowd where everyone has the pretty much the same project, but you got that one. And if somebody asks you, you can actually tell them what happened. We have here about Mern course, pretty much questions. Yeah, what I'm doing right now, I'm working on a node.js, and I'm basically debating whether once I'm done with Node.js, what I'm gonna do, whether it's gonna be Next.js or Mern. And this is kind of a toss up for me right now, simply because I'm a little bit iffy on React. I'm waiting for that React big update, and I haven't still decided which one is gonna be like, which one I should actually do, because I don't want to. I know that I'm gonna have to re-record a bunch of React content. That's just the reality. I mean, I already have the plans for new projects and everything and blah blah blah. Blah. But
jQuery course.
hey man, I used to have the jQuery. I just took it out of the what's the name, the sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I've been getting once in a while. Someone was like, "Hey, I remember you had a jQuery course. Like, what happened to it?" And initially, when I took it out, the reason why I took it out because it was with the old microphone and everything,
Yeah.
I always thought of, and one day I might re-record it, and then that one time has turned into pretty much probably never and all that. But yeah, so I do want to do Mern just because in my if you're taking my Node.js course, you know that I'm working right now on two. We just finished e-commerce, and we're working soon. We're gonna start working on Yelp, so we could use that directly right away in Mern. I can build both of them. That's why I'm kind of leaning more towards that, but I'm still a little bit iffy about that React 18 because I don't want to make a course and then it turns out that that, I mean, I know that suspense is coming, but I don't know how. I'm still planning how to implement and all that. So yeah, that's kind of the answer. How about Vue.js composition API? I haven't worked with Vue.js, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I just heard recently like Vue came out with a, I forgot what it's called, but it's basically Next.js, but it's using Vue. So it's, you know,
Oh,
interesting. But I think it just like came out or released. But for me, like I just stick to React right now because more jobs in React than Vue.js, so I'm not worried about it. Um,
yes,
yeah,
Tammy. I'll do Mern. I'll do Mern.
that's it.
No,
That's it.
Tammy's actually in Arizona. She's my neighbor. She's few hours away.
Oh, nice.
So no.
Yeah, a few hours.
She's super cool. She has like a bunch of experience in design and everything. So
Oh, nice.
she's one of those people who knows what she wants, where she's going, and it's that's the part that I really enjoy when you get to talk to people who that you just get inspired
Yeah,
really well.
yeah.
I quick kind of update. I just talked to an awesome developer 2 days ago. She's a mom of four, I believe four, uh, and she's just you can when you're talking to her, it's like she has everything together. And actually, what we talked about her first um, role that she's no, I'm sorry, not the first role, the role that she's currently taking, and basically about the stack that she's going to be using. We just discussed what was my opinions and all that. And what I'm saying is the person had a plan, she executed it, and when you talk to her, you can clearly see there's not that there's this you know every time that there's some kind of setback, it's not about like, oh my god, the world is ending. It's like, okay, what did I learn? Okay, and let's move on to the next one. And that's really like I enjoy always. If I can help in any way and talk and just talk back and forth, that really, I think that's really cool. I really enjoy
Yeah,
that part.
yeah, I see in the comments everybody it's Nuxt.js. So instead of next, it's
Now
Nuxt because
next.
Vue with Nuxt. Yeah, I will see what happens. I mean, the thing is like here's the thing. I There's so much stuff out there and it all works. Like, if you do like Laravel and PHP very well, you'll get a job. If you do React like I did, you'll get a job. If you do Vue.js, you'll get a job. Like you just have to pick one path and stick to it until you get hired, and as long as it's the path that you have jobs in your area. So like I like how a lot of people like fighting about it. I know a guy who makes $100 an hour. You will never guess what he does. He sets up Squarespace websites for people and then does very basic like SEO where you mail Google to send you a postcard and you just get listed on the website, whatever, like anybody business. He charges people $100 an hour to do that. So you could make money with whatever path you decide. You just have to stick to it. The only thing I would say in his case, he's a freelancer. He's really good at sales. So he knows how to get
Mm-hmm.
clients and market himself. And so it works. But basically, whatever you decide to do, if it's in demand, you're going to uh, do good at it. So I'll stick with React until I not paid to do React anymore. That's basically what my thought. Um,
Yeah, I mean it's always tricky. Like I don't want to start telling people what they should do, but I'm always iffy on those things where if it's Vue is already somewhat little bit like it's not the same as React, and then you're talking about the framework that is built on top of that.
yeah.
So I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn it. It's not that long, and whatever, you can pick up the API and everything is great, but I also understand that you're kind of putting yourself a little bit in a square there. That so I mean, again, if you have a bunch of companies that are looking for that, yeah, that's awesome. But if it's just for fun or whatever, I don't know. I think you can probably, if you're looking for a job.
Someone just put a comment. I think it's Alex Siotor. He
Yeah,
said
he's they left a comment, sorry, on that channel.
he's like, if you do John's course, you'll get a job. And I was
I'm
like, he's just trying to like make you like feel good. But then I'm like, wait a second, I took John's course and I got a job. So
No,
like,
he
yeah,
today actually left on a
that's true. It's
channel
true. It's true.
a comment that he that's what happened. So I was
Oh,
always I
awesome.
saw him and I was just wondering. So where are you from, Alex? So because he left basically. Let me pull it up. Otherwise, it's, I mean, sounds ridiculous. But yeah, 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 no, no,
Yeah,
no.
while you looked it up, I was gonna say I got hired like after completing your React course. I told the story a bunch of times, but the point is, it's like the differences between people that get hired and that don't get hired. And again, don't get mad at me, but I think it's the people have a plan, they have a goal, they have a systemized approach to learning, and they do a little bit every day, and they keep going after it, and then they eventually get a job. So I remember someone told me there's no, you know, junior web developer jobs left anymore. You can't get jobs. Everybody wants like 10 years of experience, 5 years of experience. And I think that's like something you hear when you're like people say either to themselves to make themselves feel better because they're not good enough at programming yet to be able to land a job. So, it's easier to be like, oh, I just don't know enough versus like, oh, there must not be any developer jobs out there. So it's not easy to get hired, but people are getting hired all the time. And so I would say, like, obviously there's luck, there's preparation, but also like realistically be honest with yourself. How much are you coding, and you have a feedback cycle where when something's not working when you're interviewing or whatever, are you correcting your path to make sure that you get there? Because I started my GitHub in 2013, I think, or 2012, and I didn't put a single line of code there until 2017, and I
Mm,
didn't get
mm,
hired until like I was 39. So a couple of years, like almost 3 years now, at my first real job. And people like, what took you so long? And
mm.
because I was slacking, I wasn't really committed. I wasn't really doing the work. I wasn't, doing what I was required to do. And so, um, you know, like it's amazing to see people getting jobs, but if you're not getting a job, like, don't like you'll get there if you do the work. I
Yeah,
just
and,
want
and and again, not to sound like a broken record, but like one of the things that is, it's to me kind of comes back all the time, over and over and over again. Like I was just talking about the developer that I just talked to a few days ago. Like I can tell that she can take any course and she would get there. And the reason for that is, again, how do you deal with those setbacks, right? It's very easy to do to listen to the speeches and
awesome.
whatever and
Yep.
be like, but how do you approach that, right? And I'm not even like I'm not a fan of these like, "Oh, let's bump you up" kind of like stuff. That's, you need to look inside. Like usually what happens, like you're faced with that problem and everyone, like, it sucks. It sucks to be rejected. It sucks not to find stuff. It sucks if trust me, when I make a dumb mistake in a course and somebody corrects me, I'm like, how stupid can I be? Like how like the students saw that, right? But at the same time, that's the learning process. That's what you go through. And the biggest, like, in my experience, what I've seen with people, they have a, like, a certain way how they can just brush off those unsuccesses, and they don't, it doesn't affect their kind of like,
Yeah.
like you can have a, like, trust
Of
me, you can
course.
have a pity party for yourself, right, that
Yeah.
night or whatever, but get up the next day and go like, okay, you know what, this is what I need, this is what I like doing, so let's just keep moving, and that's it, and just kind of try to brush it off, and this is what I see where people really succeed. So
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely just have to follow the process, make sure you're studying and doing the work. But at the same time, you're going to have failure all the time. The only reason this is going to be like the craziest story, because you're going to be like, it doesn't make any sense, like whatever. But I used to teach. I used to teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right, to kids, and kids like they're like want to be black belts sometimes. But Brazilian jiu-jitsu, unlike other martial arts, it takes like 15 years, 16 years, something stupid to get a black belt. It took me 16 years to get my black belt. And so I would
wow.
always tell kids like, what's the difference between a white belt and a black belt? And they're like, oh, like they work hard or like whatever. And the difference is a black belt is a white belt that never gave up. And that's
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
the
yeah,
attitude you need to
yeah,
have. You're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
fail, you're
yeah.
gonna stumble, you're gonna fall down.
Mm,
The
mm,
reason I got a job is because I never stopped.
mm,
And it could
mm.
take you 6 months, it could take you 2 years, it could take you 5 years, and you're never guaranteed. But the fact is, like, you have to keep moving forward. And so, like, let's say a week before I got my first job, imagine I quit, then I would have never gotten the job. I would have never achieved like what I got. And the good news is, once you get your first job, The second job is a
mm,
little bit
mm,
easier to get. The
mm,
third job is
mm,
a little bit
mm,
easier to get.
mm.
And one thing that I've noticed, like talking to students that ask me sometimes to help them with their code, um, the people that do better are the ones that show up to your session and they already have the question. They already know what they want to ask you, versus someone who shows up kind of empty handed and expecting you to do the work for them. And that's kind of
Mhm.
like where, I find people that succeed, people that just like they don't understand like what failure is, because they're just going to get up, dust themselves off and keep going, and
Yeah, and it's super easy also to work with them, right? Because if you see a person who's like this, he has a goal
yeah,
and he's just going there, right? And they're not, they have no problem going like, hey, can you help me out? And like in a sense, like, hey, can I have your advice or whatever on this one? And if they are met with like, no, you cannot, they're just okay. So I'm gonna go to this person because this is where I need to go. So
yeah,
this is what I
yep,
need to find out.
yep.
And again, it's very
They don't
easy
wait,
to,
they go after it.
and but as a side note, guys, if you want to know, like Paul is a perfect example of this because in the beginning he first sent me a first message, and I just not like, we read it, we like went back and forth whatever, and then I was just like forget about it and whatever, like nothing came to it. And then next thing I know, like 2 3 weeks later, not he's not, he's very polite, but he's like, hey, listen, we did talk about it and blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not gonna get rid of this guy. I better start
I'm
like
gonna
figuring
get some attention.
something out. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, no, no. He's so if you want to talk about like just going after stuff, he's actually a very good person to talk to because this is not BS. He does what he preaches, and I've been on the other side of it, so this is why we're here. But no, no, all jokes aside, that's really and I once I start going to jujitsu, I really enjoy it because I think jujitsu or like a lot of, I mean, I haven't done any other martial arts, and I'm like I I suck at jujitsu. Don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying, I really enjoy that philosophy that it takes time, that you will like suck greatly in the beginning.
yeah,
Just everyone is gonna kill you.
yeah,
You're going against a guy who's like, I don't know, 40 pounds less than me, right? And he's like just torturing me and whatever, tapping me every 5 seconds. And you go, but what are you gonna do? So you have two options. Either you're gonna suck it up and you'll be like, and don't take it personally and don't like become, oh, like how bad is this, or
yeah.
you're just gonna continue going and growing. That's it. You have two options. That's it. And that's why I really like that this is all
I
about life and stuff.
I've read this book because I'm very like I'm Russian, so Russian people are pessimistic by nature. Like if you grew
Yes,
up
we
in
are.
like Russian schools, there's no optimism at all. Like no Russian person who still lives in Russia is optimistic at all. That's like totally an American thing, and like I'm not even making that up because when you hear Russian parents give you encouragement, it's bad.
It's
It's
suck
bad.
it up, man.
It's like you totally failed and you suck.
Yeah,
Like what the hell's
yeah,
wrong with you? Like because all the other kids don't have like like it's just like so. But you know, yeah. But this book I read, like, cause I'm always like, I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna do this. Something bad is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. And this other book basically said, but why if it doesn't? Why if the
yeah.
next interview you go, you get hired? Why if like the next thing you do actually works out? And so now, like that's how I live. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna like I'm not gonna get this job, but if what if I do? Am I prepared for it? Or like so I'm always thinking like, yeah, it probably won't happen, but what if it will? And so everything like always kind of keeps that hope alive, and I'm constantly working forward, constantly moving forward. And um, the thing about like frustration and coding, I know we're like having fun and having a blast. And like I got into coding later in my life. I mean, I didn't get hired until I was 39, but I remember at 34, I put a quote like thing on GitHub or not GitHub. What is that? Stack Overflow. And there's a bunch of smart asses online. Like I get that. And
Yeah.
somebody literally told me, "You're too old. Jump off a bridge." That was their advice for me for coding, which is stupid. But the thing
Mm.
that I'm trying to say, you're always going to have negative people around. You're always going to have people that are telling you you're never going to do it. You're not going to make it. You're too stupid, or you're not smart enough, or like whatever. That always happens, and that pain hurts. Like there's that real frustration that you can't do it. And the thing is, like I felt it. Like I could talk about now because I got my first job, but I still suffer like every night. I'm like, like worried, do I know enough to keep my job? I constantly have to study. So like that feeling of frustration, that feeling of setback, it's real. But at the same time, like I'm not special in that case. Like you had failure in your life, other people had failure. We all suffer through some sort of setbacks, and that's part of kind of living our lives. And so what I say, yes, you will get discouraged. Yes, you're gonna feel like quitting, but just don't. You know, I know it sounds like very simple, but like what else are you gonna do? And so one thing I'm gonna tell you, I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but from my 24, like besides my like jujitsu career that I had, that luckily for me was very successful, but in terms of like achieving stuff, like and not stop, like not making mistakes, like from 24 to like 32, I literally wasted a lot of time. And so like remembering on that, like there were times where I wasn't the best dad for my father, for my daughter that I wanted to be, like whatever. And so you can't take that time back. And I realize is that whenever you feel a negativity, whenever you deal with frustration, like you're always going to have it. And so what I decided, that's like, you know what, I'm always going to try to put my positive foot down no matter how I feel, because at the end of the day, you know yeah, bad things going to happen, but we still got to move forward. We still have to live our life, and you don't want to end up in a position where you know from today, let's say to 10 years from now, you didn't take those steps, you didn't make that change. So you're going to feel just as miserable you feel today, you're going to feel like 10 years from now. So for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm miserable anyway. Let me do this coding. Let me do this thing. So at least now, like before, like 3 years before, I was miserable and unemployed. Now I'm like less miserable, still pessimistic as hell, but I have a job, that's making, guys, I started making 13.75 an hour as a React developer, which I think I was the only developer in the world, probably in US, working for that low of a paycheck. I now make $40 an hour, which is way better. It's still not the best, and then I went from 13 to 75 to $40 an hour within a period of a year and a half, which is crazy if you think about it. And then I
Mm.
know next year I'm gonna make more, and my boss already is trying to give me a raise. I'm just like, don't fire me, but whatever, but you're gonna get there. But the point is, you just gotta keep moving forward and know that setbacks is a normal part of life. I don't know if that was a motivating talk, but we're here with you guys. Like nobody just wakes up a developer. It's all through
Yeah, no, no, no.
choices
That
we
that's
make in our life.
actually, I want to jump really on that topic.
Yeah.
I find that I always found it kind of, when some of my friends, when we talk about, it's not even coding related, about some things that they are thinking about doing, and I always find it interesting when someone says, "Well, I don't have 5 years, or I don't have 2 years," but the reality is, it's not like you're going to do something really, really meaningful that time. You're just basically setting up. Okay, I don't. I'm not going to do that. And if you would set yourself to go that path and everything, then I think it would be a far greater success. Now, I don't know anyone's story, but I definitely, that's how I live. If I have something that I want to do, I like, not having a time is not usually, you kind of, you make it work. And just one last thing that I want to add on, and I know that we will just start answering in a second, but basically, I really enjoy um, indie hacker podcast. So if you can, just listen. It's really great. They talk about like real people who start their own companies, and it's nothing to do with venture capitalists. And they, it's a great, very, very positive and very inspiring, I would even say, podcast, because you just hear that. And one common theme with all those people who succeed, who make those companies, is that they always go back. They say, "Listen, you don't know how many failed companies I had before that. We only talk about this one. I had failed companies since I was 21, and every time I failed, I, learned something, or I was just like, you know what? Okay, this didn't work out. Let me try this one." And this. I know it sounds like a broken record, but that is, the reality where we live in. So either you can be negative about it, or you can just be like, okay, something didn't work out. Let me try something else, or ask people or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's 100%. Yeah,
Yeah, we
it's
kind of went into the deep discussions here.
no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
No, yeah. By the way, guys, if you like what we talk about, go ahead, like give us a like because YouTube loves it because they
Yep.
show our you know
Yes.
podcast to the rest of the world. The more likes it gets. And by the way, I want to thank you guys for coming out and talking to John
Yeah.
and I, because you guys are the reason why we're here in the first place. So we appreciate all the support, all the love. And by the way, keep asking questions, whatever it is. We'd love to hear it. I know there's a lot of questions, so we'll try
What
to
is
get to them. But
what
yeah,
is the normal starting pay for a front end developer? That really depends. Like Paul
yeah.
just said,
How desperate you are.
it, it depends on area where you live. You can
That's yep.
command, and now of course a lot of things changed because of COVID.
Yeah.
So there's more remote opportunities, but again, there's no really cookie cutter answer for that one. The country you live in, the in the states, the city you actually live in, and what you need, and plus remember that they will lowball you, because they will try to get you as cheap as possible. So that's also something you need to keep in mind. What's the normal start? Blah blah blah. Big
Yeah,
dig.
this reminds me of a funny story. Like Elon Musk, when he was trying to start a rocket ship company.
Hmm.
Now everybody knows SpaceX, and he's
Yep.
actually doing really well. He literally went to Russia because he's like, you know what? Like, I'm starting the space company. It'd just be easier if I could just buy some rockets. So he went to, Russia, tried to buy some old, like, whatever nuke rocket missiles so he could have something. And they laughed him out of, like, they laughed at him. They're like, what do you know? You don't know anything. And look at him now. He kind of like
Hmm.
made it
Hmm.
happen. And I
Hmm.
think like it's that like people that succeed are people that have that ability to just not care what other people think, because that's what I realized. Like, I don't, like, I was like, why do I keep going? Well, because I
Hmm.
like it, one reason, but another reason, like, I just don't care what people think.
Mm,
It's like,
mm,
it's
mm.
my
No,
too sensitive.
like failure is made out to be that there seems to be again whether we're blaming social media or whatever, but there's this thing like, oh my god, he failed. And the reality is, how much he or she learned in the process. I'm not saying that you should set out, but the deal is that if you do, like if you take some stuff away, then I think it's very useful. So
Yeah, yeah.
what do we have here? Great business, person of time. Okay, I'm gonna start scrolling up already.
Yeah.
At the end, we went into the what's the name into inspirational talk. So now people are
Yeah, hold
like,
on a second. There's a cool name that's just shh. That's the name. But he says, or she says, I quit my coding, or I quit, yeah, my coding for 5 months. But now listening to you guys, I feel like we're starting it again. Thanks for the speech from both of you. Yeah, I mean, listen, like, I
but
quit so many times,
but how was it like?
and like, people say hindsight 2020. Go ahead.
So you went for 5 years, right? But it was on and off, right? As far as I understand.
I started, like, first of all, let me tell you, like, my first coding lesson I took when I was 10 years old. I went to like a coding camp, which I loved, but then I got into martial arts, and then I was a bad kid in school, so I failed for like a long time. And not until I had my daughter Marissa, I was like, oh, I should probably be a better person. But like, I literally started learning to code in my early 30s. And
Mm,
because of either bad guidance, mostly being lazy, um, not taking it seriously, like, it took me a long time. And I probably around like 35, 36, I started to take it more seriously. And then 37, 38, 39, I was like, man, I need to get hired. Like, I need to make this
mm,
transition because I had a knee surgery from my previous job. I had like joint pain because you do jujitsu for like 16 years. You do anything for 16 years, running, whatever, you're gonna feel stuff. and
mm, mm,
and so I was like, I need to change my career. And I started to take it really, really seriously. And the thing that helped me was to actually try to learn less things than more things. So I literally just said, I'm going to learn enough HTML and CSS so I could at least make a basic website. Then I'm going to learn enough JavaScript, not even to make a website, but enough JavaScript to be able to start learning React. And then I just started being like, okay, what can I build with React, and try to make it better and better and better until I got to a point where I felt like I was job ready. So I literally tried to push my learning forward until I knew enough React to actually somehow someone, have me in an interview, be like, oh, he kind of knows what he's doing. And what's interesting, after I got hired, like I still had so much to learn: JavaScript, CSS, HTML, like, fill up a lot of missing gap. But for me, it was very hard journey, for sure, for sure.
I like this comment a lot. The multitasking is a lie. I can honestly, like, I can
100%.
personally send I the less multitasking to do, then I'm more productive. And I believe, I don't know, I think it was the same author that I just mentioned. He has a book called Deep Work, where he actually that it has
Yep.
proven scientifically where, once you start, like, I'm gonna do this for 5 minutes and then that, it actually takes for your brain to, as it's switching, you're losing
Yeah.
the power to make those decisions. So once you're in it, it's way better. That's why you can focus on basically the work that you need to do. So, and that's a very big thing for me, where I try to not to kind of jump around. I have specific hours that this is what I do, and then I try to focus. And
That's
that's why,
smart.
again, the social media and all that is not a good thing if you're trying to get somewhere. So I definitely, and it's the same thing actually about the topics that you're learning. If you're starting with HTML and CSS, like, go through that one. Don't try to jump too much. Now, you will, as you go with JavaScript, of course, you'll use HTML and CSS, so you'll be coming back to that one. But then at that point, try to kind of stick with the JavaScript or whatever you're doing. So I don't suggest this. Okay, I'm going to be learning React and Node at the same time.
Yeah.
I like pick one, and then
Or even
then
like
you can do the other one.
React and Redux at the same time. Like some people think they could learn React and
Mm.
Redux at the same time. I don't recommend it. It's
Yeah,
it
you can. In my experience, you can just, once you're done. Yeah,
yeah.
it's Cal Newport, yes, and it's called context switching. Yes, that's exactly it. That also a very very good book. That it kind of
You,
was
you
watershed
know,
moment.
I'm realizing all the books like I heard about and wanted to read, you read them.
There's I don't know. See, this is the good news though, that it was on one of the Twitter threads or whatever it came
Oh,
on, and
there
I
you
was
go.
like,
Oh,
that's
so there's
it. With
benefit
books,
to
it's
Twitter.
kind of interesting. This is also where you have like the silly thing, right? I'm about to go for a walk. I know I can listen to the book, and then I'm like, I have to like push myself, and then I
Yeah.
always need to like, no, like this is actually like, whether it's listening to the podcast or whatever. So it's always funny how your brain is kind of is not cooperating with you, and whatever. But yeah, no, that was a great one. Also, okay, silly question. Still, still seeing here. Okay, now I want to unpin it. Okay, what do we have? Multitask, break of concentration, lost voice, silly question. Is it silly? Here's the silly question. Do you want to hear a silly question? Uh,
Let's do it.
it was so, I just lost it. Hey guys, please answer this silly question. Here it goes. Is it hard to get a completely remote Node.js engineer job for MNC companies? Thank you so much, guys. I don't know what is MNC companies, but the first remote job, it's probably going to be tougher than the. I mean, again, what we're talking about remote, because of
Yeah.
COVID, a lot of things are remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, are we talking about like remote different continent, or are we talking about in your area, but it's still remote? So that really depends. As far as backend development, again, it depends. We were talking last time about, for example, Nashville, and as far as I know, because I had some backend developers who were taking my styled components course, and when I talked to them, yes, it's kind of like a back end town, right? So where it's a bunch
Yeah.
of shops of actually focusing on back end development. So you have a bigger chance of getting your first job as a back end developer. But most likely, as far as my experience, it's front end one, getting that front end one first, and then back end is more common path in more areas, if that
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like with remote jobs, like now with the pandemic, maybe it's a little bit easier, but historically, like, it, like working remote is like the cool thing to do, and
Mm,
so a lot of people, you kind of have to earn that right to work remotely, but now
mm,
I think things
mm.
are changing, and is making it easier. But my first job were all in office, show up, And the only reason I like remote now is because when the pandemic happened, we went, started working remotely, and then I left that company, and I was able to find a contract role through a recommendation, which is remote. So I feel like contract roles probably have more opportunity to work remote. But if it's like a company, they might ask you part of the time be in the office if
Mm,
unless pandemic wise, it's not safe or whatever. So
okay. Like no, what's really cool that we are getting like bunch of like I have right now one, two, three really good questions.
nice.
Uh, Tailwind versus Bootstrap. So very good question. I personally, you know what? I really like people behind Tailwind. You know, if have you ever read the Refactor UI?
No.
If you those are two things. So pick up pick up Figma tutorial
Yep.
and go and see Theme Forest and pick up Refactor UI. The cost is a little bit up there. It's I believe $130, maybe 40. It's the greatest book as far as getting somebody from zero kind of understanding how to make a UI, how to make nice, clean, modern UIs, and it's written so intuitively that and you have so much resources in there. This is the greatest book that, as far as just because I remember that not that
Is that
my yeah sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that a book by Adam Wathan
Yes,
and
yes,
Steve?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I think
Don't,
of.
if you ever have extra money, this is I guarantee you won't regret that
Yeah,
purchase.
I'm gonna
And
have
anyway,
to get that.
because what happens like prior to that, it's always, especially when if you're just starting out, like how to set up the colors and what's the like just some basics. We're not talking about the next great design, but just to get something that looks nice, so we don't have red and blue in the same page. And it's actually it's way tougher in the beginning than it seems. And after reading that book, it just gives you this clear view of, okay, so this is the best approach, at least initially, right? And then you can always change those things and all that. So since they're behind Tailwind, I definitely would go with Tailwind versus Bootstrap, because like they're, in my opinion, they're just brilliant of what they do. And but the issue is that I think that you really need to understand CSS if you're looking for a job.
Yeah,
So that's where I kind of would
I was gonna say like we might have a disagreement.
oh, I need
Drama alert, drama alert. No,
drama alert, yeah.
we agree. We agree on. By the way, first of all, I'm gonna start before we get really too much hate on each other. Like Tailwind is actually really good. I do like Tailwind, and I'm using Tailwind in a Next.js project that I'm building. But my thing is obviously, like you said, learn CSS. But the only thing I would say is before you jump into Tailwind, just spend 2 weeks, see Bootstrap, just so you know what it is. Because I worked for two companies that both used Bootstrap,
Hmm. Hmm.
and for my current company, we are using Bootstrap. And
Oh
so, like
wow.
again, I would say, yeah, it's crazy, and that's kind of I'm hesitant to say don't use like Tailwind is awesome, but we're not using Tailwind. Like I've worked
Hmm.
at a company where we use Bootstrap, Material UI, those popular ones. So I'm not saying you have to master it or know it, but just know enough that you could build something with Bootstrap if you had to. Because I feel it's more popular because Tailwind hasn't been around that much.
But
But with that being said, Tailwind is really really
no,
good.
no, no. But that's why no. It's really great to have your input. But my question then is, as far as hiring, did they ask for a bootstrap, or they were just like, hey, we know you know CSS, and we are
Right. Oh,
using
100,
bootstrap.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. No,
so yeah.
100%. It was
Mm,
they
mm,
said like, HTML, CSS, and they said they're using Bootstrap, but they didn't even ask any Bootstrap questions. I think it's just like telling you that's the framework we're using because they're probably
mm.
assuming if you know CSS,
Yeah.
doing
Then
Bootstrap
you'll
is
pick
not
it
a
up.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, like when it comes to frameworks, it's really, if you're comfortable with CSS, then again, that choice will depend on like Paul's 100% correct. If the company goes with that, then of course you go with that. That makes way more sense. And then we have, sorry,
I had a question for you though.
yeah,
Um, have you?
when
I
it's
don't
gonna
know.
be Tailwind
No, no,
CSS
no, no,
course,
no, no, no,
never.
no. No, 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 not Tailwind. But for your
Mm,
personal project, have you tried combining Tailwind with styled components?
no.
or you don't think it
No.
makes even sense? Because I
Uh,
saw articles where people try to
from
do that.
No, because the thing is, for me, the reality is every project that I make ends up somehow I ended up recording, and the fact that if I have built it already with Tailwind CSS, there's no way I can record that project ever. you
Yeah,
know so for me, everything always comes down to the fact where I need to make the CSS myself, so
right.
that way, when I will record that, because again, it's sooner or later it's gonna
It's gonna
happen.
happen. Yeah.
So I haven't tried. Again, I use a lot of their concepts when I'm building. Like, I always
Okay,
go back to
gotcha.
their docs. I like, whether whatever the case may be, right? Wherever CSS I'm interested in that point, I go back, because I think of them as kind of like, in not industry standard, but I just really like how their UIs look. I really do. So
Yeah,
I
no,
always go
they're pretty.
back and to understand like where I'm going with this and whatever. But as far as just straight up using Tailwind, I haven't got around it, and I don't think it's gonna be anytime soon, because they do put everything pretty much in a code. So let's say I'm building a component. There's probably gonna be more lines of Tailwind than the actual React logic, and then I have to
Right.
explain all that. And
Yeah,
and that kind of, I used in one of my first courses, React courses, I used Bootstrap, and it really backfired me
yeah.
on me. So no, 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 we're not gonna do that anytime
So,
soon.
so you like the concepts, but putting and
Yeah,
stuffing all the class names, like
yeah,
if you
yeah,
ever wrote Tailwind CSS, Bootstrap isn't even that bad, but you'll
mm,
have your class
yeah,
go
yeah,
beyond like what you could scroll on your.
yeah.
So what I
No,
started to do is I forgot what you used, but like I put the class names inside my style sheet, and then I'll
mm.
point at whatever,
Oh, okay, okay, got it,
like
got it.
CSS modules or
Yeah,
something, because I'm
yeah,
like, if I ever have to make a change, how am I gonna like fix it? I'd much rather have it in one like place, and that's why I was kind
mm,
of curious using, you know, like style components where you're able to inject the class names or the styling into your class like styled component, so
mm.
that way it lives there and
Yeah,
you're
and then you can,
wrapping
yeah,
your
instead of,
node. And so if you have to make a change, you decide Tailwind sucks. All you
mm,
have to do is just rewrite the CSS and not
mm,
really,
mm,
you know what I
mm.
mean? So that's why I
Yeah.
was curious.
Yeah, no,
Curious.
no, no, no. That was it. Kind of like the moment I switched from Bootstrap, like the one that I was using in React course, I kind of never looked back. I was like, you know what? From this time, I'm just gonna create everything as far as styles
Yeah.
in my own CSS, so I can control it,
Yeah.
and then I can easily reuse it. And it has really, like, in React projects, I really enjoy the styled component thing, because it lets me use it, and then it's very easy to integrate from project to project. And yeah, so what else?
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah.
What
No,
else?
that's awesome. So basically, guys, learn CSS first before you learn it, Bootstrap or
And
Tailwind.
as a quick sign note,
Like,
if you
I
want,
like how.
sorry,
Go ahead.
no,
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 go.
no. If you want the biggest time saver that I have found as far as CSS projects, come up with a default template. Come up with default
Yes.
styles. Come
Yeah.
up with CSS variables. Come up with the typography, whatever. And actually, I have a video on the channel about how I did set up my default one, and I think it's very useful, because I literally can take that thing from project to project, and I can say that I've saved a lot of time on this idea where again, I don't go too crazy with the classes,
Yeah.
but the general styles, again, the headings, the whatever, all of that is there, and that's really nice. So
There's a couple of good questions. Uh, but one that like stood out, there's a couple actually, but let me go with this one. This because this is interesting. I'm actually curious for you, John. What do you do to have laser-like focus, and what time of the day does your focus diminish?
that's
When I
okay.
wake up.
I have a no. It's okay. This is something that I can talk about for 3 hours, uh, and maybe more. So what I've discovered as far as recording, I don't do. I have set time of the day pretty much right away. Like, I have a toddler right now, so it's not as come and go. Like let's say that the Sundays and Mondays are the most fun day because I do get to spend time with my daughter all day, but I still want to get some work done. And what happens, I pretty much can do it only when she's sleeping. So it's one of those funny things where literally 5 minutes ago I was convincing my toddler to put on the pajamas, and then I'm talking about how to use JWTs in Express, right? So there's this there's this kind of like bounce back. So I'm maybe not the best example, but as far as recording, I right away jump on it in the beginning at the
Yeah.
day. I don't waste too much time because I believe that there's like and this is not to like say how great I am or whatever, but in order for me to explain something, I cannot see that doing that, for example, right now at 9 o'clock in the evening, right? So that's what normally I would do my like do work right now, but I would never record. I would maybe edit and whatever or build an application, but I would never ever record because I feel that it's coming through. I already have not probably the cheeriest voice, so if I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm like this, and I'm like really tired, and so I that's what I try to do. And second thing is like I was saying, if you're talking about laser focus, then get rid of the freaking social media. Just I know because it's funny again in those books what they talk about is that your brain every time you're starting to face some kind of questions and challenges, your brain automatically wants to kind of get
Yeah.
out. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, do you want to check the message because you really have this important email and you have this, and every time that happens. So for me, it's like, okay, I sit down, I try to, so I don't have every 5 minutes something is going on, and then slowly kind of force myself and to do it. But I also, one more thing, I don't agree with these 60-hour weeks and whatever. We
Yeah.
talked with Paul about this, like the hustle, like the hustle porn that's kind of here, especially in the United States, where it's like if you don't work 60 hours, you're a loser and whatever. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
BS. You need to recover, you need to come back, you're actually again your brain needs to rest, and then you'll get way better like return from those hours, because people talk about these hours as if like, listen, if you're sitting there and just watching YouTube videos, it's not really, nothing is happening, you're just technically working and all that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I I
No.
I, I try to stay focused as far as just not having too many distractions.
You're definitely more organized than I am, but one of the things I started to do, and I'm lucky that my work allows, and I think for me it makes sense that people have flexible hours for people to work, because you want to work when you're most productive. But like I'll start coding, and if I really feel like really distracted, number one, I try to stay on focus, so I'll set like a hour timer, 2 hour timer, and I'll just focus on one thing.
Mm, mm,
But sometimes like I'll be like, oh, like I want to do YouTube. If I find myself going on YouTube, like I'll
mm,
literally stop my billing time.
mm,
This works for me because I work from home, and
mm,
I'll watch YouTube, but I'll say what exactly it is. I'm watching YouTube, you're entertaining yourself, you're doing this, whatever,
mm,
but I don't do both at the same time, because to
mm,
me, the danger is like falling into that, like, oh, I could multitask, I could do this, like, no, you can't. So I much rather stop working and do
mm.
half an hour of YouTube, just
Yeah, 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 no,
focus
no, no,
fully,
100. Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
no, no.
go back to
Uh,
work and do another 2 hours of work. And
mm,
I do the same
mm,
thing with Netflix,
mm.
or like whatever. um, it just because like I find out the biggest way to get robbed of time is to try to work and do something else. Then you're
Yeah, yeah, no, no,
not
no.
being productive. And what's funny is like, training myself on the kind of like, I'm still like learning how to do this, being uh uh what's that word, like mindfully present in your work and just
Mm,
constantly doing that. I kind of find myself getting tasks done faster than I thought I was going to do it. And I'm like, man, like my boss expected that this would take me 3 hours, but I finished it in like hour and a half. And now I'm like, what do I do? Like, like
mm, mm.
it's like, just because you like, if you just focus on work, you're gonna get more done. It's crazy. I didn't believe it, because my fiance, she's like, I could multitask. We'll watch a movie. She's like, this is my favorite movie, and like it's a chick flick, and I don't like
Yeah.
chick flicks, but it's my fiance, so I'll watch it with her. But then half the time she's on the phone checking her
Yeah.
social media, and then I'm like, you're not watching the movie, and she'll be like, yes, I am. But then whenever I check my phone, she's like, Paul, you're not paying attention. I'm
But
like, oh god, oh god.
question: does she like when is that happening? When she's checking the phone, is she checking what happened in the movie though? Too
She already watched that movie 20 times, bro.
oh, okay.
So at that
No,
point,
because
it's like,
this is what happens in my
yeah,
family. So,
that's funny.
yeah,
That's
my
funny.
wife can multitask, but what I'm
All wives,
focused.
first of all wives could multitask, and if you want to stay married, you just believe it, even
Yeah,
though you know,
yeah.
man
So,
can't multitask, women can. That as long as you know this, you're gonna have a happy marriage. There, I'll send you guys the bill later. That's the truth. That is the truth.
yeah. So, but as far as staying focused, like one of the things is again, I believe in like exercising. I think that
Yeah,
like kind of exhausting yourself physically also and next time you come back to the problem or whatever, you're gonna be way sharper in my opinion, and that's what I try to always do it, and again, there's
here's a
I like the balance.
here's an interesting question. And this guy like asked a bunch of times, and
Mm,
he says like, "What's your view on boot camps? They're literally looting money in return, promising you a job, promising a job for the people." And what I would say, like to that, like there's been people that try to like benefit from others like for all of eternity, and I don't think it's fair like to lump all boot camps into one
mm,
category. I would say there are, I'm sure, some like they're all businesses, but you could say that about anything. You could say about courses, you could say it about like whatever. But what
mm.
are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions that one of the three that I mentioned, and this
Yeah,
is something that we can do the entire episode and probably two episodes on.
yeah,
Uh, it comes down to me the same how I prepared the question that I was answering about leaving the job. A lot of it comes down to just being understanding where you go into. I also I'm not a fan of these blanket statements. This is bad, this is good. there
yeah,
is there is no such thing. I'm a fan of kind of nuance. So what you need to understand is that if you're going for a boot camp, the reality is that no one will find a job for you.
yes,
That's one thing you definitely, and if they say they do, then you know that I'm not saying that they're maybe scamming you, but they're not definitely telling you the truth, because once the program is done, you're the one who will have to find a job. No one else will do that for you. And that's something that I think that a lot of people miss out on, because it feels so comfortable to kind of put this on somebody else and be like, okay, they will do this for me. And the reality is they won't. So they might give you some tools,
yeah,
they might give you a little bit of training and all that, but the idea that they will do that for you is not true. Now, another thing that you need to be aware of, and this has nothing to do because I'm selling the courses, but in 2021, or we're approaching 2022, there's very few boot camps who teach something that is really unique and you cannot find it yourself. That
yeah,
is true. So I'm not saying there's different people. Some people cannot learn everything themselves, right?
yeah,
And again, I'm not saying who's better or worse. There's tons of great people who finish boot camps and they go on and work in industry. That would be silly for me to say
yeah,
that only the self-taught devs are good or whatever. What I'm trying to say is that you're if you need that structure where they
yep,
teach you, set you up and everything, yes. But as far as when I have talked to people who have finished those boot camps, and I straight up asked him, I'm like, now looking back, is there something that you couldn't have found, right? If you would be actually looking for that. Yeah, it's way more tough if you're doing that.
yeah,
But yeah, like yourself. But it's definitely not, I don't know, 7 years ago when they just started popping out, when you could make
yeah.
a case that they will teach you something. And one last point, sorry, the last one is if, and no, I forgot. Geez, what I was going to say something I wanted to mention and whatever. Yeah. So I guess say, and I'll just try to remember.
If it comes back, yeah, just let us know. I was gonna
Yeah.
say like the funniest story I heard was like from two people that went to the same boot camp, and this one person, oh my god, like I loved it, I learned so much, I knew like I like just really into it, and then when she graduated, she just like a fiend looking
Mm,
for like whatever. She just kept applying. She kept building on her portfolio. She and like she just had a good network. So through friends, she was able to eventually get an opportunity and get a job. And now she's been working like in Boston, like whatever. But then
Mm,
this other person I knew, they first of all dropped out. They didn't even finish. And then they
mm,
just complain, complain, complain. And I think it's like what you make the best of it. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like, and,
mm,
and I think they might give you a place where they have structured curriculum, but it's up to you to make the best of it and apply yourself. But what I started to see, some good boot camps, they have actually very strict like guidance for you to even be a student. Like there's a lot of
mm.
boot camps that um, they won't even take you if you don't meet their prerequisites. And to me,
Yeah,
that's a sign
yeah,
of a good
yeah.
boot camp
Mm,
because they
mm, mm,
want to make sure that the students that they're getting
mm,
um, actually are going to be able to get jobs. And those type of boot camps, they actually do have like good history of how many people get hired, because number one, they pre-qualify everybody, make sure that
mm.
people are the right fit, and then whatever else they do. But I remember I applied to a boot camp for a while because I had this fear like that I will never be able to get hired because I didn't go to boot camp, because I felt that a boot camp is some magic formula or magic pill that guarantees you a job, and that is just not true. Like you said, John, you do have to do that work yourself. You do have to get hired yourself. And so that kind of like always entertained my idea, maybe I should go to boot camp, maybe I should go to boot camp, because I thought self-taught is not enough. And the same, like, and then eventually I realized you could find the same information like that they're offering. The only hard part is being organized and sticking to your plan every day to succeed. And I think, like you said, some boot camps, they provide structure. And
Okay.
so if you can't create that structure yourself, that you go to boot camp.
We got our
Uh,
first hater, so I just removed him.
what did
So
they say? I'm sorry.
I no no no
No,
something
so
that
something stupid.
something like whatever. See ya, dude. Anyway, I actually remembered what I was gonna say. So, uh, one thing again, you need to check what are they teaching you. So again, if you're working in the area and they're teaching you something that doesn't even relate to the jobs you're gonna get, then yeah, that's a big red flag, and you shouldn't like I at least I wouldn't go there. And I know it sounds kind of a little bit silly, where in the beginning you're already kind of relying on them, but the fact if you won't like if you don't do a little bit of that homework, yes, you will end up in that situation where you pay them whatever amount of money, and then there's a next course of students coming in, and no one's gonna sit there and like hold your hand and all that. So that's something you definitely need to be aware of. So
Yeah, yeah.
but again, this probably could be one of those like big topics that we can make in whatever in videos. But yeah, it's again, you cannot use the blank statements. You like there's tons of good ones and there's tons of great developers who came out of it. But it's always my opinion that it like just Paul said, it really depends on how, like what is your approach there. My interviews are like, you are from non-IT background. Where the hell did you learn all this in-depth stuff? Okay, thank you. Thanks. Glad you find that. All humans. Blah blah blah. We have Andrew Ladd agreeing with us pretty much. Thank you. Any suggestion who is struggling with design? Yeah, the same. Are you struggling to come up with ideas, or are you struggling to implement them? Again, there's kind of different things. So if you could answer that, and meanwhile, there was a question before: how much JavaScript you should know before React. So this is kind of again something we're pretty much repeating, but in my opinion, it's like I call it bread and butter, where you should know how to fetch data. You should know how to iterate over the list. So I'm talking about map and rest of them. And you should be familiar with kind of ES6 features like the structuring and spread operator and those type of
Yep.
things.
Arrow
And then
functions. Yep.
and that's kind of a like bare minimum. Now, of course, what that means in order to get to the fetch, there's still going to be steps along the way. So it's not like you can right away jump into the fetch and all that. But that would be bare minimum for me to go there, and then just keep in mind that you will have to pick some stuff if that is just the bare minimum that you know, since those are the questions that I've been getting as far as React. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, that's true. And like I've been working with React for a very long time, so a lot of the JavaScript that you use on the day to day is basically covered, but what you just said. So if you learn that, definitely move to React. Um, this is a funny one. In all humans, alertness drops between 2 to 4 p.m. Start studying after you wake up. So to counter that tech utopia, I read a book that they say, because I have like I'm always how do you improve your learning? So one of the books I have, like I forgot what it's called, like something like rapid learning or like whatever, something silly like that. And they say after you learn something, just take a nap and it'll help you to remember it. So now I live by that. So I study at night and then I go to sleep. And then I'm hoping that it works. I hope that
No,
it's
but
true.
no, but that is a good point where a lot of time, well, it's also something that I read in the book where the brain actually does the thinking for you at night. There's
Yeah,
plenty of cases where you're struggling with something that's happening there, and the next thing you know, in the morning you're like, okay, I actually know the answer. Let me try this one out. So
yeah.
that's actually a very good point where that's why I also think that it's a good idea to give your brain a rest because it will figure it out for you. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting all the time. So is Ruby on Rails worth learn in 2021? I really have no idea of this. I haven't used it, and I don't know anyone who's actually using it. So this is
I
gonna
think
be
they still use it in Shopify development if that's something if someone is interested in, I guess. But I haven't used it for a long time.
hmm.
Here's an interesting question because a lot of people ask, like, this Cell Vito or something says, John, are your paid courses valid to put on a resume as education, or how should you present your education if you come from non-traditional kind of background? Like for me, I'm like a college dropout, so obviously I'm not putting that on the resume. But like, how do you show your experience? I'm like adding to that question a bit.
The as far as courses, yes, you definitely can. I mean, okay, I misunderstood. I thought about the projects. If we're talking about the courses, I see people putting the courses on LinkedIn and stuff, but I'm always kind of iffy on that because that just means that you watch the course.
Yeah,
For me, it I mean, it's probably not going to be the most practical answer, but it really comes down to just putting the stuff that you did, and if
yeah,
that's non-related, they will still know that, you know, one way or the other. And I wouldn't personally put courses on the, I don't know, you actually have a better view on this one because you're much better with LinkedIn, but I never put courses on my resumes.
yeah,
I always when I see people doing that, I'm like, okay, but
yeah.
you just watched the course. Is it really I've never talked to any hiring manager who says yes, I hired him because of that. So
Yeah, for me, I don't think like somebody said you could add certificates on LinkedIn. I have like some courses I took, but I don't think they do anything or add any value. For me, the only thing that I started to do and recommending for people who, let's say, don't have experience and they're trying to get their job, like, and so the same way I write my resume for the things that I did at my work, like for instance, use node.js to connect to PostgreSQL database and created a CRUD application. Like that's, let's say, like something you do at work. Like I would describe my personal project that I have in my GitHub as my experience. So I would say from January, or like I'll, first till January 30th, worked on e-commerce store. And then I put bullet points underneath that and I say, translated like mockup into modern like JSX syntax for React. Like I'm just using examples off the top of
mm,
my head.
mm, mm.
Wrote like fetch like queries with using like async await to get data from a backend API. Created the backend API that is like I literally describe the steps that I did in my project at home, but I'll write it as if it was my professional experience. Obviously, I'm not going to say my job, I'll say personal projects, but I'll literally talk about them exactly the way I talk about the things like if it was my job, you know what I mean? And so at
Mm,
least
mm.
people kind of see what you're learning, you know. So like if you have like no experience whatsoever. So I've been like kind of doing that, just to kind of like people who read your resume, they're literally just going to scan down and see what you did, and they want to make sure that you're kind of doing the stuff that they're hiring for. So that's
I
my logic for that.
I saw you had a video on you interviewed someone. I believe his name was Hamza on your channel. I
Yeah,
didn't watch the I didn't
that was a
watch the entire video, but
while
you
ago.
covered these things,
Yeah, we
right?
did talk about, we covered those things, and like at the end of the day, like resumes are tricky because there are like our bad resumes and our good resumes, and they could all have the same information, meaning that you have to make sure that you're presenting your resume in a way that makes it easier for employers to get a snapshot within the first 3 seconds that you're the right candidate. And there's a specific way of writing it. And if you don't know what that way is, people are just going to throw away your resume and not look at it. And before people judge me and say, "How do you know?" I used to have a resume. I have to say this, that got zero, zero, zero callbacks.
Mm,
Like nobody liked it. Then the experience is the same.
mm,
Then I took exactly the same experience and I rewrote it,
mm.
but I was more specific of what it was, very descriptive of things I did, things I accomplished in my project. And like I talked to a recruiter who's my friend, and she literally asked me if she could use my resume as an example resume. And I was like, oh, I see. So the first time my resume was poorly written, even though it's the same information. So that's kind of like the trick there, but that's like a whole video in itself.
Yeah, the resume question is interesting, but I don't think that again, if you like having no experience, very rarely you'll somehow, you'll have to basically come like just say, hey, listen, I didn't do that. This is what I did prior. And I don't think whether putting the courses really makes that big of
Yeah,
a
yeah,
difference. I
yeah.
think
No, no, I don't think it does.
having the projects, and again, this is where the again, those local friendships, connections, whatever you call them, this is where it makes all the sense in the world, where instead of trying to kind of make up the resume that it's not, you actually have already people who can vouch for you that you're actually good at what you do. So that kind of it would be my best answer.
Yeah.
uh, Hi guys, please answer this. And yeah, we're actually over 2 hours. Is it okay,
Oh my
Paul,
goodness.
for
Really? Yeah, yeah.
another?
I'm good.
Can you do another 10 minutes? Because I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we
yeah, yeah,
went
yeah,
like 15 with
yeah.
that first
Yeah, that's
one.
fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
thank you very much.
No, I could stay as long as you want.
Yeah, well, it's already 12, man, for you.
Listen, I'm a
So,
night owl. Like, I'm probably gonna look at work. Should I make something right now? Should I?
hi guys, please answer this. What to learn after Mernstock? Why? When you say what to learn after Mernstock, again, are you applying for a job? If you're applying for a job, then most likely you should learn SQL, because that's something that is going to be necessary. If that's not what you're looking for, then I'm not really sure how to answer. I definitely There was a question before on the chat. What do you do after the what's the name? Well, React, I would go with Next.js. So to understand, because building
Yeah. Yep.
something with Create React app is not, I'm saying it's bad or anything like that, but you'll need Next.js or Gatsby.js. And in my experience, it's more, Next.js is easier to get started. So, but I'm just a little bit confused. What do you mean by after merge stack? Is it so you built the projects and then you're looking for a job and no one's hiring? Then again, I would check what are they actually looking for. If it's just for your own kind of, then yeah, I'd say Next.js.
Look, Tech Rally's here, so I'm gonna pick on him a little bit. He goes, "What do you think about using themes for your portfolio page? Is that considered cheating?" And he knows that I have one of the best looking portfolios, that sites that I made, that is from a site called Bootstrap Made, which are free Bootstrap themes. So I don't think it's cheating. I think it's leveraging like stuff like whatever.
No,
Uh,
I don't. I don't like. Again, this is gonna be one of those where I think coming up with that from the scratch? Like, what is the difference whether you go to a theme forest and find a already pre-made,
Yeah,
template
and
for
then
you,
you
or
yeah.
you like that? The only difference, I guess, in that one is that people have to actually pay the money for, so you have less people using the same thing, unless you're. But I've never had any issues with using templates and I mean, coming up as a designer, I think sounds a little bit, just figuring everything out yourself. I mean, you can, if you can do that, that's so, but I
No,
don't consider cheating.
yeah, yeah, and I think for people who
I
are
was
starting
giving
out,
you
they
a
always
freebie,
think like
pal.
I have to. Thank you. I thought so.
Thank you,
Like
Tech
I knew that.
Rally.
I knew that 100%.
We needed
Tech,
you 2 hours ago. You
yeah,
could have
tech,
saved
no,
us.
yeah. Tech Rally also has a good YouTube channel. If you
Yep,
guys
yep, yep.
haven't
Go and
seen it,
check
check
him
it
out.
out.
Yes,
Check him out.
yes.
Real good guy, by the way.
Yeah.
With the yeah. But the funny thing, I was thinking about it in my head, like why everybody who's trying to get a job, who wants to set up a portfolio page, which is like your business card, like people going to make a fast judgment based on the appearance of your. By the way, you guys could go to uh, like I'll put in the chat. Like I don't care. Like you guys could see. Just go to paulbruslavsky.com and you guys could see
Oh, I
uh,
also want to see that now.
yeah, it's super simple. Don't submit the form. I'm currently working, so I don't want people to leave me things. So the form is not hooked up.
Okay,
So
let's
like
see.
I'm not taking any new inquiries. It doesn't, that.
Oh, I think I remember looking at it when the first one of the first when you no, I thought that this was very legit. I again I
No,
don't.
yeah, paulbruslavsky.com is legit. Yeah, it's legit. It's like how you contact me if you
No, no,
want.
no. I'm talking about the layout, look, and everything. I'm a big fan of just having, I don't know. As far as resume, I agree with you that that is your business card, but I also don't think that you should go too crazy on it. You can go on the projects that you put on, but as
Yeah,
far as this one, this should be
exactly.
very clean,
Right.
easy
Yes.
to find,
Yes.
and everything. I don't think you need to go like
Yeah.
ballistic with the features and animations and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I
So
think.
here's the thing that people have to understand: a portfolio site is there to sell you and present you in the best possible way. And then your portfolio projects are the ones that demonstrate your skills. So you just want to set something up where people could find you and be like, okay, yeah, it's great. So, but the thing about like, here's the I got sidetracked, but the question I get all the time: should I build my portfolio site for myself to present my portfolio projects as a developer? If that makes sense. It's like, do I build my own website myself from scratch? And for me, that's a crazy question because you're just starting out as a developer and you're still learning. So, how can you build a website yourself that's supposed to present you in the best possible light if you're a beginner developer? Like, you're not going to be able to do it. And so instead, that's why I use the theme, and that's why I recommend a lot of people use themes. Create that, and then as you get better and as you progress in building your portfolio projects, like you want to have like 3 to 5 projects in your portfolio, just replace the worst one that you have currently with the slightly better one that you just finished building, and over time iterating, you'll have better and better projects in your portfolio. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I agree with that
but
one for
yeah.
sure. Where I wouldn't suggest putting 15 projects on your resume. You want to put three, and
Yeah.
the better they're gonna get, the faster it's gonna be for people. They're not gonna go over the
Yes.
entire thing, and
Yes.
just because you have 70 of them, it's not gonna make a difference. What they're looking for is the how complex pretty much they are.
So
I think.
funny story, like I basically talk about my portfolio and why people shouldn't do it. So I had a bunch of people that kind of followed my example, and when
Mm-hmm.
they send me the links and I look at their portfolios, I'm like, wow, this is a really good looking portfolio. I'm like, that looks very professional and clean, right to the point. And it's funny, it's all like templates, you know.
But okay, let me ask you like a silly question. So when you're talking about like we're are we talking about two things? Because when I'm talking about, let's say, a Figma template, right? So that is just HTML, and meaning that is just design, right?
Yes, yeah.
More or less, right? So you can create that in Next.js or whatever, or Gatsby, whatnot. But when you're talking about Bootstrap theme, how much the logic is tied to the look, or how does that work? Let's say if you want to do that in React, or that's
Well,
just straight up. Bootstrap.
So for my personal like website, I just found a Bootstrap theme and I literally just changed the text inside. Like I
Mm,
didn't
mm,
really care about
mm,
it. And it's
mm,
literally not a React, it's a
mm,
static
mm,
website.
mm,
Um,
mm,
like never tried. Well, I don't want to say never. I just recently started. So the way I use Bootstrap is or Tailwind, I'll put Bootstrap or Tailwind in, and then I'll write the stuff myself, and I'll add the classes myself. What I haven't done, I'm doing it recently, actually. So I'm in the process of doing it. I've never bought a theme that's a Bootstrap theme,
mm,
which is already done with all the designs. It has all the pages, and I've never like implemented in React. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
Like I didn't take a pre-existing theme and convert it to React. Because the issue I have with Bootstrap is they have a lot of like their own JavaScript. But if you're using React, a lot of that stuff you're going to like have React handle. I mean, they have React Bootstrap, which is basically React components for Bootstrap, but I've never bought a theme on Theme Forest that's a Bootstrap theme and had an easy time converting it to React.
mm, mm.
Yeah,
No,
I
no,
guess
that's
I don't
what
know
I
if
was thinking, that
that
you
was your
can get
question or not.
that you can get a nice design idea and literally you just rebuild it with components.
Yeah,
You have
that's
all the
what
distances and everything.
yeah, so I
So,
recommend people definitely do that for this, not just the fact that your design is going to look nice, but because you're learning by building. So, like what I do is I, for my portfolio site, I just bought a theme,
mm,
but for my projects that I'm building myself, that I want to showcase my skill, but I want them to have a clean design, I will find a like either Figma file or Adobe XD or Photoshop file or whatever, and then I'll recreate that myself.
yeah, no, no, no.
Yeah.
That's 100%. Okay, I think we're 2 hours then in.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really want to thank everyone for coming. And yes, we missed a bunch of questions, and we'll try to do better next time. And hopefully, we were able to answer some of it. Now, this one really kind of turned into like inspirational talk, like pretty much right from the get go about quitting the job, and then we talked about the failures and everything, and so maybe this was a little bit less practical than what we did last time. But again, it's just sometimes these things pop up, and it I really want to cover those type of things because it feels like it's not really the tech that sometimes is tripping
yeah.
people up, but it's really about just kind of having understanding how the how really works when you're trying to get the job. And again, thanks Paul for coming. Like
No, thank
very
you,
very
John.
very very happy to have you here, for your input and everything. And thanks for everyone who came here, asked the questions. Thanks for everybody on Twitter and all that. Do you
Yeah,
want to sound off?
yeah. Like I'm just gonna add, like, thank you guys. I mean, for me, it's like like such a like amazing pleasure to be here with John. Like I never felt that you know like that would ever happen. And the reason I say this is because we all like start on the bottom, and we work slowly and find opportunities, and eventually things will open up. And to me, like I'm kind of starting to taste what it is to say like I made it as a developer because I'm growing up my company, I'm meeting cool people, and like I know that from where like I'm sitting, John's sitting, other people who made it sitting, it's very easy to give advice, but at the same time, we weren't born this way. We didn't just show up and all of a sudden John had this insane YouTube channel. Like he worked really hard. I looked at how many videos you have. You have over 500 some odd videos. You have a ridiculous number of videos. And the funny part, a lot of your beginner videos that you put the same amount of effort into have like 100 views, 200 views.
I mean, if you want to talk about growth, look at the first videos.
Right,
Go,
right, right.
that what people
Y'all
like
guys,
look
go
at it.
look at John's first
and
video
and actually,
right now.
yeah, and I actually purposely keep them there. First of all, for
Yeah,
two reasons. So people can see that, and so I can see, like, because this is why I always talk about, you always want to compare yourself to what you were doing this morning, yesterday, whatever. Comparing yourself to other people will always lead to just being like, oh, well, I'll never be like that. But it's never going to be success if you need to stick with yourself. So
I'll tell you guys the secret why I never stopped asking John or trying to talk to him. Number one is because like his courses did help me change my life, and I really appreciated that. And like I could tell he was like a cool guy, because the craziest thing on Udemy for me is like writing you like a thing and you being like, oh, send me your code, and you
mm,
literally gave me the answer. Like you weren't like you took time to help me out, and that was like amazing to me. And I was like, man, I want to be like that. But like the thing is like I'm like I will never ever like be able to talk to you ever, like it just because I'm like it's just ridiculous, just that's not how it works, I have to. And I just remember like we all start from the same place, and I like to me like watching you I'm like dude's amazing. But then I saw like where you started, and I was like, wow, he got here through just a lot of good effort, hard work, and at the end of the day, he started just like everybody else does at the
yeah, no,
beginning.
no, no. That's it's
You know what I
never.
mean? And that's why I was like, he's just like me, just like way ahead. But the difference is
No,
because
no,
he
no.
just put it no, but let me finish,
Yeah,
John. I know
sorry,
you humble.
sorry.
I know you humble, but you're just few steps ahead because of the work that you did before I did. You know what I mean? Like I started to do my work, and because I'm doing my work, like almost like following in your footsteps, like I'm making progress. You
Mm,
just did it longer than I have. You have over 500, videos you made. You published these courses. You took your ideas and you changed them into actions, and you just kept going, and that's why you're here. And I'm slowly building my subscriber, not by magic, but by taking the steps, by doing the work, and I slowly see my channel growing. And then now, like, I got introduced to you and this is happening, and so like if you do the work you're gonna get there, like, and so, but part of it, like why I was not afraid basically to like write to you, is because I'm like he's a human being like the rest of us. He's not
yeah,
like
no, 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 and it's
like
it's a lot of, but it is, there is this difference. If for example it's not even. I mean, again, I never looked at it as far as not responding to people. It's a lot of times just, like, oh, you read something, you're like, okay, I'm busy at the moment, I'll get back to it, and then just it never happens, and then. But that persistence is always a key when if you if you're trying to get something somewhere, and all
yeah,
that. So yeah,
yeah,
thank you everyone for coming. Really, we really enjoy. We have a blast. So we'll see you next Monday at 8 o'clock.
yep.
Hope to see you there. And then yeah, we'll try
I
to
was gonna,
try to do this. By the
I was
way,
just gonna
Alex is from Romania, the person we
oh
talked about
nice,
before.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, he was saying like his time difference and stuff. uh yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, as long basically I was gonna say, as long as you keep inviting me, I'm gonna keep showing up, John,
no,
because these are fun,
that's for sure happening.
these are
Yes,
fun, these are
yes,
fun.
it's for
I
sure
don't know,
happening.
like, so the funny thing, like, I know we're talking like, so I do my streams on my channel sometimes, and like like you know like sometimes they're not as professional as I like them to be. So the funny part is when you hopped on my stream, I was like, oh my god, like I hope he doesn't see like some craziness, me talking about random stories.
No,
It's funny. I was like, oh no,
I was
like
just I wanted to mess with you because of the politics. I was like,
it's so
we'll
funny.
see whether he throws me off.
No, no, no. But it was funny because like I get ridiculously like sometimes you have you do a stream for 1 hour, you can't be responsible for what the second hour is gonna be like.
Yeah, no, 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 and
So,
it's also,
but no, thank you
but
so
you're
much for
like
the
a
support.
one man show there, so this is why like having you on, because then like we can go back and forth, and you know, I
Yeah, that's good.
I really like your opinions and all that. It just makes it way better. Okay, guys, again, thank you for coming. We had a blast, and yeah, we'll see you next Monday. So I just click here and finish, yeah?
Hold on, let me before you go because I saw a question. Let me quickly plug the times that I'm at. Besides this
Uh-huh.
amazing channel and being here on Monday 8 p.m. Pacific time on my channel, Saturday 6 p.m. Central time. I do the Talking podcast, and then Tuesday 7 p.m. Central time I do a live coding where we're building something together. It's basically me failing for an hour, but it's okay. You
Yes,
guys have fun.
Tammy, you should check out Paul.
Yeah, I saw
He's
Tammy
he's
asked, so
he's
I was like, yeah.
he's very good at his stuff. Sounds
Yeah, well,
good.
yeah, thank you guys. I know this is
Sounds
going on,
good.
guys. I'll
Okay,
talk forever.
come on.